Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Pika fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Ash Had Only Dragon Pokemon. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Kids are among the cruelest beings on the planet, Delia Ketchum would wholeheartedly agree. One look at her son would be all the evidence she needed. Another bruise, a few more cuts. No doubt, the older children at the daycare had gotten physical with Ash once more. It was honestly heartbreaking. Ash had been so excited to go to daycare and mingle with peers his age. But very quickly, whatever excitement and brightness in his honey whiskey eyes had dulled into a pained disillusionment. Ash was always the last to arrive and the first to leave, not wanting to stay in that building any longer than he absolutely had to. Delia never once blamed him. Why would her son want to stay in such a toxic environment where anything out of the ordinary was treated with fear and contempt? Ash being mute certainly did not help matters. As a baby, Ash never made a single noise. Not once did he cry, forcing Delia to pay special attention to ensure his needs were sustained. This put tremendous strain on her marriage. Her husband refused to accept a child who was defective and walked out, leaving her all alone to raise Ash. It was never easy. Her own parents had disapproved of her marriage and cut her off financially. And the people of Pallet Town saw Ash as the reason for the failure of his parents' marriage, no matter how much Delia tried to defend her son. They were close-minded, bigoted and prejudiced. There was no compassion and understanding for the Ketchums. It was the town versus them. Delia put her heart and soul into loving Ash as he absolutely deserved to be loved. But she was human, and she needed help that was hardly ever given to her. There were times, when things got especially bad, that she wondered what she did in her past life to deserve such circumstances, but never once did she blame her son for their predicament. Her son was innocent, and she will never curse someone who did nothing wrong. It was just so hard. To be continued. As much as the townspeople would like to claim otherwise, Ash Ketchum was smart, even as a toddler of only 3. He knew that he was different, he knew that he was at a disadvantage. While the other children at the daycare screamed, squealed, shrieked and shouted, he could do none of that. No matter how much he opened his mouth, nothing would come out. He could never reply to the teacher's questions when asked, despite knowing the answer, and the children would laugh at him for that, calling him stupid and other names despite the truth being completely different. The older kids would constantly shove him around, push him into things and sometimes even kick him, fully aware that he could never cry out for help. He was constantly at the nurse's office, and even she was tired of him showing up to silently beg for plasters and bandages. He stopped going after a while. He hated seeing the pain in his mother's eyes as she saw the injuries. But what could he do? The ones who beat him up were older and bigger than him. He couldn't tell the teachers because he didn't have a voice and they hated him anyways. He could only remain strong and endure it for his mother's sake. Evidently, it only went so far. Ash would wake up during the night to his mother's weeping, and begin to wonder if everything was his fault. The people around him certainly thought so, blaming him for destroying his parents' marriage and being defective. It fueled the nightmares, which he kept to himself to avoid troubling his mother further. It was hard, extremely hard. But he will not give up. He will remain strong for both himself and his mother. Weekends were the best days for Ash. No daycare, no being stuck in the same building with children and teachers who detested him. He could run out into the rolling fields surrounding the town and be himself. He had no one to play with, which was an unfortunate fact, but he was okay with that. For hours he would sit amidst the wild grass and weeds, the wind whipping the plant life and his hair about. He felt at peace here, away from the town that tormented him and his mother. Every time the wind blew, and the howl swept across the plains and hills, it was almost as if the wind was singing to him. It was a comforting tune, like an angel watching over him like a protector. Even the rustling of the grass and leaves of trees sang a heavenly song that soothed his aches and pain. No sadness found its way to him when he was alone with the natural world. If only he and his mother could run away, leave Pallet Town behind and sustain themselves with nature's offerings, it would be paradise. The perfect chance at a peaceful life away from humans and their prejudiced flaws. Ash was smart, and he knew such a fantasy was impossible. Nonetheless, he treasured the peace nature provided for him. Even as he returned to the town that continued to revile him, he always knew that nature would await his return with open arms. For about a year, a dark routine cemented its place. Delia would work in Professor Oak's laboratory as one of his many research assistants to support herself and her son. Ash would face a hard day at daycare and come home with at least one bruise or cut, sometimes both. At night, under the cover of darkness, mother and son will release their pent-up emotions, sometimes together, other times alone. They never took their anger on one another, neither wanted to alienate the only means of support that they had. They tried to be there for one another when things got particularly bad, but sometimes, only loneliness helped. It would be easy to assume that every time mother and son released their emotions in one way or another, things would subsequently reset and each day will be a clean slate. Unfortunately for Ash, at least, the pain never truly receded come each sunrise. A residual ache was left behind, only to get exacerbated once more. Like waves crashing onto a beach, the pain ebbed and flowed, building a layer on top of the first, climbing ever more towards breaking point. And come the year when Ash turned 4, that breaking point was breached, and all that pain exploded in a truly terrifying manner. It had been a perfectly ordinary day, by the standards of the townspeople. Delia had dropped off Ash at the daycare, and come the afternoon, the children were let out to play. Ash never went out with the others. Nobody wanted to play with him, and it was prime ground for the older kids to gang up on him. He stayed inside, fiddling with the toys in the boxes or reading the books on the shelves. However, he had gone through everything that could entertain his lonesome self, so he ventured out to at least get some sun. While the children ran around the playground, Ash stayed to one corner, staring up at the sky and watching the clouds drift by. Some might say that trying to make shapes out of clouds through imaginative creativity was incredibly boring, but for Ash, it was all he got. Heh, look, it's the freak again. They have returned. Ash never got around to know their names. 3 boys, 2 years older than him, had boxed him in against the picket fence that lined the boundary of the playground. There was no escape. Back again for more? He likes to be kicked? He really is a freak. The boy in the middle, with sandy blonde hair, was already rearing his foot back to deliver said kick. Ash braced himself, curling into himself. It was pointless to do anything else, other than minimize the pain that was coming. He had been through this before. He can take this. This was nothing new. Just more bruises and cuts, another moment to see the pain in his mother's eyes, another night of lonesome festering in sadness. The foot was already swinging towards him. Ash squeezed his eyes shut. A flash of blue light, followed by a shout of pain. Ash's eyelids snapped open. The sandy blonde boy was lying several paces back, screaming wildly. He was clutching his leg, and the sight made Ash almost heave. The shoe and sock that once covered the foot was gone. The skin was blistered and rolling off in layers. Blood trickled out of the wounds, and the flesh was singed, producing a slightly burnt odor. The other 2 boys spun on Ash. What did you freak? One of them charged at him with the intent to land a punch, and Ash curled into himself again on instinct. There was another flash of blue, greater than the first, and the attacking boy screamed as he too stumbled to the ground. By then, the other children had heard the screams. 57 pairs of eyes bore witness to the boy's mangled hand, the skin completely burnt off and the flesh underneath charred. The fingers were twisted into unnatural angles and the smell of burnt muscle wafted through the air. Within seconds, the entire playground descended into bedlam. Amidst the screams and panicking, Ash did the first thing his instincts told him to do. He got to his feet and ran through the splintered remains of the picket fence. Pallet Town was not only surrounded by rolling plains and hills. Pockets of forests were part of the natural landscape, and the daycare was adjacent to one such pocket. Into the forest Ash went, going deeper until the screams of his peers could no longer be heard. He stumbled to the ground against the base of a large tree, out of breath and sweating. He reached up to wipe the sweat from his forehead, only to notice that both his hands and lower arms were glowing the exact same blue as the 2 flashes of light from before. If Ash could scream, he would have. Stumbling back against the tree, Ash stared at his hands in disbelieving fear. What was happening to him? Did he cause the 2 flashes of blue light that somehow seriously injured 2 of his tormentors? If he really was the culprit, how on earth did he do it? And more importantly, what was going to happen to him? Were the townspeople going to hurt him? Was Rio? Ash barely got to turn his head at the sound when something burst from the nearby thicket and smashed right into his face. To be continued. Again, if Ash could scream in pain, he would have. Toppling back onto the ground, he clutched his nose, trying to will away the pain that spread across his face from the incredibly strong impact. Rio. Ash opened his eyes, to be greeted by a strange creature standing before him. It stood on 2 legs, and it looked distinctly canine. It had mostly blue fur, but its legs were black, as were the mask-like feature around its emerald green eyes and 2 appendages that hung from the ends of the mask. It had a tail which was also blue, and 2 white bumps on its forepaws. He had no idea what kind of creature it was. Is it a Pokémon? Suddenly, there came rustling and footsteps. The canine creature's ears perked up. There he is. Ash never got to see who it was. The canine leapt past him, one of its forepaws glowing the same blue as his arms. There was a great flash of blue light, and loud shouts. Ash heard the sounds of bodies falling to the ground, before the creature rushed back to him. It grabbed his shirt. Rio. Rio. He didn't know what it was trying to say, but from the tugging, Ash surmised that the creature wanted him to follow it. He didn't hesitate. Pallet Town was in a tizzy. The children had all been sent home to their frantic parents, while the 2 injured boys were whisked off to the hospital in Viridian City. From the tears and wails of children who witnessed the incident, the story spread like wildfire. Several parents hounded Delia, bombarding her with questions and accusations, forcing Professor Oak to intervene. Nobody knew the whole truth, only that Ash Ketchum was somehow involved. A search team was quickly formed to look for the boy. However, several hours passed, and the team failed to return. Another team was quickly assembled, and about half an hour after commencing their search, the second team found the first team, sprawled on the ground and unconscious. They were immediately sent to the Viridian Hospital, and, upon regaining consciousness, would tell their families and Officer Jenny that they managed to find Ash, but before they could get close, a strange creature jumped out on them and released a great blast of blue energy that knocked them out. When he heard about this, Professor Oak had an inkling of what this creature might be. But until they could find Ash, there was no way to know for sure. As he comforted a distraught Delia, he realized that many wrongs have been committed, and he had failed, as an influential figure, to set things straight and right. Things were going to be different around these parts, and he will make sure of it. Ash wasn't sure how long they have been running, or how far they have gone. The creature had led him out of the pocket of forest, through several fields and hills before taking him into another pocket of forest. The sun was already beginning to set, but given how thick the foliage was, one could be forgiven if they thought that it was already night time. Finally, they came to a stop at the base of a towering tree. The creature let go of his shorts, allowing Ash to crumple down, out of breath and exhausted. It stared at him intently, as if waiting for him to recover. Once his breath stabilized, Ash made eye contact with the creature. It tilted its head. Rio? This proved to be a problem. How was he supposed to communicate with it? Ash tried a few hand gestures, almost charades-like, trying to tell this creature that he couldn't actually speak. After a few moments, it appeared to understand. The small canine got closer, and pressed a paw against Ash's forehead. Their bodies began to glow, and Ash felt a pulse of energy shoot down his spine. Can you hear me? Ash's shock was verbalized by his mad scramble back into the tree trunk. He did not expect the young-sounding male voice that suddenly rang in his head. Fear not, Master. I'm not going to hurt you. I know that you can't speak, so I connected our auras so that we can freely talk to one another in our minds. Ash was stunned. So, you can hear my thoughts? Only when you speak to me directly, like what you just did. Okay, Ash swallowed. He had so many questions. What are you, exactly? I'm a Riolu, a fighting-type Pokémon. Alright, so it's not like he was communicating with some alien being. Why did you bring me here? You were in trouble. The people who were looking for you were bad, Riolu replied telepathically. They wanted to harm you for protecting yourself. You mean the blue light? Yes, that blue light was your aura protecting you from those 3 children. What is aura? Aura is the spiritual life force that every living being on this planet has in their souls, Riolu explained, and upon seeing the confused look from Ash, redefined his explanation. It is what keeps you, me, and every living being alive. Most living beings are not able to access their aura because the amount in their souls is very small. However, certain types of Pokémon and some humans have bigger amounts of aura, and are able to use them as they may. So, I have aura? Yes, Master, Riolu nodded, a great amount of aura. So much so that I could sense it all the way from my home, at the very moment you were born. Ash had to ask, where is your home? The kingdom of Lucario, in the region humans call Sinnoh. But Sinnoh is so far away. Ash was shocked. How could you sense my aura all the way from there? Like I said, you have so much aura, and it is so strong. I sensed it from my home in Sinnoh at the moment you were born. I then made it my mission to seek you out and pledge my allegiance to you. What's allegiance? I am loyal to you. I will never leave your side even on the pain of death. Ash's breath caught in his throat. Riolu wanted to be with him? He didn't care that he couldn't speak? Master, I can sense your disbelief. I know that humans have treated you horribly because of something you could not control. They lack compassion and understanding, and I know it must be difficult to realize that there are those who care about you. I'm sure your parents care about you, and so do I. Ash drew his knees close. I know Mama does, but people are always saying that I drove my daddy away because I couldn't speak. Your townspeople are heartless, and so was your father. Master, if you will accept me, I will prove that my loyalty is genuine. I swear on my life, I will never betray you. I will rather have death claim me than to turn my back on you. Never mind the whole talk about loyalty and allegiance. Ash was just so happy that someone other than his mother wanted to be with him. Riolu absolutely did not expect the 4-year-old child to literally pounce onto him and hug him tightly. It took something splashing onto head for Riolu to register his current predicament. Master, are you crying? No one wanted to be my friend. You're my first friend. Riolu's heart cracked. I'm really sorry, Master. The built-up emotions of the day spilled over. Ash wept silently, and Riolu hugged him back. Neither of them moved well after the sun set below the horizon. Riolu? Yes, Master? Where are we exactly? Near Route 1, Riolu replied. When can we go back home? Riolu was silent for a moment. It might not be wise to go back just yet. The people who came for us near the daycare had ill intentions. They wanted to harm you. I don't know if we will be attacked if we go back. I see. Ash stared off into the trees. Maybe tomorrow will be better? I hope so. Your mother must be really worried. Back in Pallet Town, Delia was beside herself. She had gone home, thankfully uninterrupted, thinking a mile a minute about what happened to her son. She had no word, only a reassurance from Professor Oak that he will personally spearhead a search for Ash as soon as possible. To her, this was the worst night she had come home to, and it was going to be, by far, the longest ever. As for Professor Oak, his night was far from over. Just before sunset, the revered researcher had called a town meeting in the main square. Every resident, right up to the mayor, gathered before a stern Oak who had long lost his patience for bullshit. All of you are a disgrace, he began on no uncertain terms. You made the lives of 2 innocent people complete hell over nothing. You all are the very definition of malicious, heartless monsters who inflict harm and pain on someone else for the fun of it. You spread your contempt for decency towards your children, poisoning an entire generation because you have no capacity for understanding or compassion. Oak took a deep breath. There were, obviously, many indignant looks amongst the residents gathered before him, and no amount of rebuke will make them change their mindsets anytime soon. He could only say what needed to be said. From now on, things are going to change. The Ketchums are under my protection from henceforth. To mess with them or cause with them will mean full retaliation from me. The only reason I did not decide to pack my things and leave altogether is to not uproot the Ketchums from their home. Also, I promised Delia to find her missing son, which I will remind that it was you all who drove him off. Disgruntled mumbling could be heard from the crowd. I am not joking. If I hear that you harassed Delia or Ash, I will have you brought up on criminal charges. My blindness has gone on for too long, but no more. I will bring Ash Ketchum home, and you all will treat him and his mother with civility. If not, there will be hell to play. Am I clear? There were no nods of heads. The townspeople were not going to give him such a courtesy. Dismissed. To be continued. Master, here. You must be starving. Riolu had gone off for a short while to find some berries upon hearing Ash's stomach growl. In truth, the boy hadn't eaten anything since lunch hours prior. And while he has never eaten berries raw before, the sight of the wide variety atop a large fern leaf that Riolu had used to carry them back was mouth-watering. Ash started off with one he recognized, oran berries. These were incredibly common throughout Kanto, and his mother often used them in her recipes. He bit into one, and let the different flavors spread across his tongue. He finished it quickly, and went for more. Sitting next to him, Riolu helped himself to his finds. They ate in silence, the wind and passing Pokémon providing the only noise in the night. Riolu? Yes, Master? How did you get to Kanto from Sinnoh? It's very far away. Once I sensed your aura, I sought permission from the elders to seek you out. I traveled through Sinnoh, keeping myself out of sight from humans. I snuck onto a ship that docked at another region called Farum. From there, I crossed the landmass, sometimes on foot, other times I hitched rides from vehicles. I arrived in Kanto about 6 months ago, and I spent that time seeking out your aura. Was it hard, getting here? There were difficult moments. Sometimes I had to battle wild Pokémon who saw me as their next meal. I had a few close calls with humans, but I managed to get away each time. There were also times that your aura would fluctuate, leaving me without knowing where to go next. Fluctuate? At times, your aura was strong and easy to sense. Other times, it would weaken considerably, leaving me unsure of where to go next. Okay, Ash helped himself to a Pecha berry. Can you tell me about aura? Aura, by itself, is a spiritual energy. But for those who have enough aura to use it, it can be used for many different things. You can use aura to attack bad people and defend yourself and others. Aura can also be used to communicate through the mind, which is what we're doing. You can also use aura to read minds, which is incredibly useful for finding out your enemy's motives, and use it to see through materials and surroundings. This is called aura sight, and it is incredibly useful if you lose your normal sight temporarily. Will I be able to do all that? Asked Ash. Not without years of training, but I will help you, Master. You have the potential to become an Aura Guardian, and it is my sworn duty to see that you become one. What's an Aura Guardian? An Aura Guardian is a protector of people and Pokémon alike. They defend the vulnerable, help the poor and sick, and stand up against those who want to cause harm to others. Their aura is their main weapon, and they were among the strongest humans in existence. You see, there has not been a full-fledged Aura Guardian in a very long time. Nobody knows why they disappeared from history. In fact, your birth caused quite a stir in the kingdom of Lucario, since no one in living memory had that much aura that could be felt over great distances. The last time such an event of noteworthy interest occurred happened with the birth of a child within Sinnoh itself. And as far as the elders told me and my peers, that child still has a long way to go before he is strong enough to be a guardian. This was interesting information, Ash thought to himself. So how will I begin training? Well, you will. The rustling of leaves interrupted Riolu's explanation. Immediately, both were on high alert. Something is coming. Stay behind me, Master. Ash was more than willing to listen. Out of them both, only Riolu had the means of fending off whatever was approaching. It could be a Pokémon or a human, that was still unclear. The rustling grew louder, and soon after, footsteps could be heard getting closer. A beam of a flashlight swept over the ground and trees. Riolu's paws began to glow blue, as whoever held the flashlight came through the bushes right into their spot. Ash? Is that? A small sphere of aura had already formed in Riolu's paws, and he would have fired it at the intruder if Ash hadn't suddenly spoke in his mind. Wait. Stop. It's Professor Oak. The revered researcher had stumbled back upon seeing the aura sphere about to be fired straight at him. He remained guarded even when the Riolu cancelled the attack out of nowhere. What? It's Professor Oak, he is not a bad guy, Ash replied, he's not like the rest. Seeing as he didn't appear to be at the receiving end of any further attacks, Professor Oak adopted a more careful approach to not frighten the child and Riolu. Ash, are you alright? The boy nodded. Oak glanced at Riolu. Did this Riolu bring you here? Ash nodded again. It didn't hurt you, right? Riolu took offense to that. He activated his aura, head appendages rising and quivering as he projected his voice to the world. How dare you insinuate that I will attack my master? Have you no honor or shame, Oak? The researcher stumbled back from the harsh accusations. Ash immediately intervened. Riolu, stop it. Professor Oak doesn't know better. Knowing that he couldn't convey any reassurance verbally, Ash went over to the researcher and hugged him. He just hoped that it was enough. Did Riolu take care of you, Ash? The boy pointed to the overturned leaf, with the remaining berries strewn across the ground. Oak turned to Riolu. Please forgive me. It's just that Ash's mother is incredibly worried about him, and I promised to bring him home. Riolu activated his aura again. How do you know it is safe for my master to return? Will he be attacked again? I can assure you that Ash will be safe. I had a stern talking to with all of the townspeople. If they harass Ash or his mother again, there will be severe consequences. I will do everything in my power to keep them safe. Riolu's expression didn't change, but at least he wasn't about to attack Oak now. Time will tell if I can trust you, Oak. But I will give you the benefit of doubt for now. That's all I can ask. Oak turned to Ash. Shall we go home? Your mother is waiting. The boy nodded. It was a tearful reunion between mother and son at the front door. Both hugged one another, one weeping and the other silent, but also shedding tears of his own. Oak and Riolu stood to one side, letting them have this moment. Delia eventually composed herself. Samuel, thank you so much for bringing Ash home. I made that promise to you, Delia, and I was going to fulfill it no matter what. She wiped the tears from her eyes, and noticed Riolu. What is that? Oak explained, it's a Riolu, and he was the one taking care of Ash while the whole town was in chaos. Delia knelt down before the young emanation Pokémon. Thank you for watching over my son. Riolu activated his aura to respond. It is my sworn duty. To do anything less is sacrilege. Delia gave a tired smile, turning to her son. You must be tired, Ash. Why don't you go up and get ready for bed? Ash nodded, disappearing through the doorframe. Riolu quickly followed, leaving the two adults alone at the porch. Samuel, I suppose there's something you wish to talk to me about? A couple of things, but it's late, and I know you're exhausted. If it's all right with you, I'll swing by tomorrow when we're both rested. That's fine, Delia nodded, appreciative of her boss' understanding. Perhaps after breakfast? I'll clear my schedule. Riolu had only been with them for a single night, but Delia was more than happy to welcome him as a new family member. Breakfast come the new morning was a change of routine. Normally, Delia only made enough for herself and Ash, but with a new family member, more needed to be made. It was a change that Delia wholeheartedly welcomed. Even if it was entirely simple, regular Pokémon food pellets with berries mixed inside. Just as promised, the doorbell rang just as Delia finished washing up. She went over to open the door. "Ah. Samuel, you're here. Good morning, Delia. How is Ash and Riolu?" "They've finished their breakfasts," she replied, "and as far as I know, they had no trouble sleeping last night. Do come in, would you like something to drink?" "No thanks, Delia." Oak shook his head. "Already had an entire pot of coffee this morning. I'm trying to cut down these days. Could you get Ash and Riolu over?" "I will, please make yourself comfortable." Delia disappeared back to the kitchen. Oak sat himself down on an armchair. Delia returned shortly with Ash and Riolu in tow. The three sat down on the sofa. "Hello Ash, did you sleep well last night?" asked Oak. The boy nodded. "Wonderful, now there are a few things I would like to talk about with you, your mother and Riolu here," Oak continued. "In light of what happened yesterday, I believe that it is no longer wise for you to go back to the daycare, Ash." Ash nodded. He was fine with that. And it wasn't like anyone there would miss him if he stopped coming. "In order for you to continue your education, I will have one of my assistants be your tutor. That way, both you and your mother will be in the lab at all times." Riolu spoke up. "Oak, I trust that you will make sure that this assistant will not cause harm to my master." "You have my promise," the researcher swore up and down. "I will also spend time with my master to teach him how to use his aura," Riolu continued. "Such time will not be disturbed by anyone." Oak nodded, though Delia was confused. "What is aura?" Riolu spent the next few minutes explaining to her about Ash's powers. By the end of it, Delia looked rather winded. "I know it is a lot to take in, but you have my word that my master will learn with the utmost care." There was something Oak wanted to ask. "Riolu, as far as I know, your species are not able to use aura in moves and attacks. How are you able to?" "The elders of the kingdom I was born to said I was blessed. I do not know anything else beyond that." Oak nodded. That was as good an answer he was going to get for now. "Finally, Ash, there is one more thing. I wish to personally teach you and your mother sign language." The boy tilted his head in curiosity. "For some people who cannot hear or speak, like yourself, sign language is their way to talk to others. They use their hands to make gestures or signals to tell someone else what they want to say, but they aren't able to verbally. That way, you have a means of communication." It was an interesting concept, Ash thought to himself. He had personally never seen this sign language in the works before, but from Professor Oak's description, it sounded really cool. "Are you all right with these arrangements, Delia?" By then, the brunette had composed herself. "Yes, they are reasonable." She sighed. "I'm sorry, it's just that it's a lot to take in." "I understand," Oak nodded. "If you'd like, we can arrange the start of Ash's tutoring at a later date." "I would be most appreciative, Samuel." Things have changed from henceforth, that much was clear to Ash. He had absolutely no idea how far his future path had shifted from its original trajectory. To be continued. It was eventually decided, after some discussion between Oak and Delia, that Ash would begin his private tutoring in a week's time. That gave Riolu a chance to begin his master's aura training ahead of time. "So what do I need to do first?" Ash asked. "You need to be in tune with your aura," Riolu replied. "In all the times your aura has manifested thus far, it has acted on the primal need for protection. You had no real control over it, and it can be dangerous." "How so?" "The elders have told me stories of humans who misused their aura or did not train themselves properly to have complete control of their aura. None of them have happy endings. In most cases, the humans injure or kill themselves in accidents, or in some extreme cases, their aura explodes and destroys a big area, like an entire village." Ash paled, images of smoking ruins filling his mind. "You must have a strong connection with your aura before you can control it. And to do that, your emotional control must be strong. To start, let's meditate." Meditate? It is the practice where one focuses their mind to train awareness and attention. Ideally, meditation is best done in a state of physical and emotional calm. Since your mother is currently out, we won't be disturbed for a while. "How do I meditate?" "Follow my example," Riolu instructed, moving into seating position with his legs crossed. He waited for Ash to adopt the same position before continuing. "Maintain a straight posture, close your eyes, and follow my breathing. Try not to move unless you absolutely have to." Silence followed, except for the wind blowing in through the open window and the calls of bird Pokémon flying past. Ash found the breathing easy, and for a while, the stillness was manageable. But his body wasn't used to prolonged PRDS of no movement. Eventually, his muscles and joints began to cramp up, and when the aches became too much to bear, Ash snapped back into the present and got up. Riolu opened his eyes as his master's joints cracked and popped. "Keep trying, master. With practice, you will improve." Most children of Ash's age would have groaned and whined. It would have been boring for them, when they could have spent the time outside playing or doing something that was more entertaining. Ash simply sat back down again, closed his eyes, and evened his breathing in time with Riolu. That was how Delia found them after returning with the groceries. She peeked into her son's bedroom, and quietly left. She could ask what they wanted for lunch later. Ash's private tutoring, taught by an assistant named Christopher, focused on language, mathematics, and Pokémon biology. It was just like daycare, without any other children around. Ash's playground was the Pokémon corral behind the laboratory. It was a vast, enclosed open space that was divided into different sections, each suited to accommodate the different types of Pokémon that called the corral their home. The vast majority of the corral residents were mild-mannered and had no issue with the 4-year-old boy and his Riolu wandering around their home. Sometimes, Ash would talk with the Pokémon with Riolu's aid in translation. He heard plenty of stories of battles and traveling, but also many wistful accounts of their trainers effectively abandoning them to the corral and only calling them back to fight gym leaders, before being sent back to corral once all was said and done. Now, Ash had no ambitions to be a Pokémon trainer, but the idea of using Pokémon to win battles, as if they were nothing more than weapons, clawed at his heart. It was depressing to know that there were so many trainers out there who had no ounce of affection or love for their Pokémon. It was a sobering lesson for the young boy. The outside world, beyond the boundaries of Pallet Town, was equally devoid of compassion and love. As an Aura Guardian in training, it was his duty to bring love back to the world. He could not afford to let himself fall to the flaws of mankind. Back in the laboratory, Professor Oak's lessons on sign language took up the rest of Ash's time there. Together with Delia, Ash learnt the basics and practiced extensively with Oak and his mother. Very quickly, it was established that Ash's strengths lay with language. Many toddlers his age would take some time to learn new words and their meanings, even more so with sign language. Professor Oak was admittedly surprised when Ash mastered the foundational level within days and requested to move on to the next stage of learning. A test proved the boy's capabilities, leaving Oak quite proud. Ash is advancing faster than I could have ever expected, he later told Delia. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he mastered sign language by year's end. Whether that would be the case remained to be seen. In the meantime, something else was about to take place that would push Ash's life in a new direction once more. It was a Saturday, summer was coming to an end and autumn beckoned soon after. Despite the slightly cooler temperatures, the air conditioner was on in the living room. Ash and Riolu were the only ones at home currently. Delia had gone to Oak's laboratory to meet with the researcher over something about work that Ash didn't quite understand just yet. The pair already had done their routine meditation. Already, Ash could see significant improvements. He was able to sit still, in position, longer than when he just started out. And while he was still unsure how achieving a strong emotional control enabled him to better control his aura, he was still satisfied with his progress. Right now though, both he and Riolu sat on the sofa, surfing through the channels on television to entertain themselves. Despite being a toddler, Ash was never interested in the children's programs or channels. The news didn't quite interest him, documentaries either bored him to sleep or were too difficult to fully understand, and he didn't have any vested interest in any of the soap operas, dramas, and comedies. Occasionally, a game show or variety series might pique his curiosity, but not for long. So it was essentially mindless surfing, though Riolu didn't appear bothered by the constant switching. Then, his finger missed the button for just a second, and a channel remained on screen. For those who are just tuning in this afternoon, we're only a few minutes away from champion Lance Blackthorn's first ever exhibition match since taking the crown last year. He will be battling against Hoenn's rising star and the man slated to become the next regional champion there, Steven Stone. Ash set the remote down. This sounded interesting. A female commentator took over. Champion Blackthorn and Mr. Stone go back many years, and their rivalry is famous across the regions. It is rumored that the two men had an agreement that whoever became champion of their home regions first would challenge the other to an official match in order to cement their right to the crown, so to speak. The young boy had heard of Champion Lance in conversations before, but this was the first time actually seeing the man in person, through the screen at least. And a champion of both Kanto and Johto? Lance must be incredibly strong to earn the title. Loud trumpets blared an orchestral piece, and the spectators of Indigo Stadium went wild. On one end of the field, a set of metal doors opened. Out strode a tall, powerfully built man with red hair styled in a manner that reminded Ash of a Gyarados. From his broad shoulders, a black cape with a red underlayer billowed in the wind. Champion Blackthorn takes the stage, and we're about to see Mr. Stone make his entrance. Steven Stone was somewhat shorter, and he wasn't as bulky as Lance was. Nonetheless, he commanded an air of respect and intimidation. Just because he wasn't a regional champion, that didn't mean that he could be messed with. Steven could easily decimate someone on the battlefield, if this exhibition match was any indication. A referee took his place in the middle of the field. Champion Blackthorn, Mr. Stone, please release your first Pokémon. Lance called out a Kingdra against Steven's Claydol, and the battle that followed could only be described as a massacre without much blood. Pokémon were built sturdier in their biology than most humans. An attack that would have otherwise severely injured or killed a human were sometimes only a mild inconvenience for Pokémon that were built to withstand such attacks. Of course, if a fully evolved Pokémon attacked another one that was only in their infancy stage, there was a significant possibility of severe injury or death, but two fully evolved Pokémon pitted against one another was not a scenario where death might occur unless an external factor was at play. The fight lasted about 5 or so minutes, resulting in Claydol being blasted out of the field from a hydro pump by Kingdra. The referee called the match in Kingdra's favor, before calling on Steven to release his second Pokémon. An Armaldo burst onto the field, but was quickly taken out by Kingdra after only 2 minutes in battle. An Aggron was released to avenge Armaldo, but it too was taken out by Kingdra after 5 minutes of back and forth. It would require Steven's Skarmory to take out Kingdra, but to the spectators and those who, like Ash and Riolu, watched the match on television, it was abundantly clear who had the upper hand. Yet despite the odds massively against him, Steven was coolly composed. Even when his Skarmory was blasted out of the sky by Lance's Charizard, he remained steadfast. And it wasn't as if his entire career relied on winning this exhibition match, it was purely entertainment. His team knew that, and they went all out and lost gracefully. "We have given the people what they want, old friend," Steven called out to Lance. "Even though my defeat is inevitable, I am ready for one last hurrah. Can you give me that, Lance?" "You know that I am always willing to support my friends, Steven," Lance chuckled, "but I am not the champion of Kanto and Johto for nothing. Hydreigon, let's finish this." It was a final battle between two powerhouses. Hydreigon, a fearsome dragon-type Pokémon with 3 heads, appeared often in Ash's tutoring due to how violent and life-threatening it was to humans and Pokémon alike. The fact that Lance had one in his team spoke mountains of how much power the man had to tame one of the most dangerous beasts on the planet. Steven's Metagross was no slouch either, incredibly temperamental like its wild counterparts, and it had the immense advantage of Mega Evolution, which wowed the spectators as it grew and rose high into the air in its enhanced form, facing off against Lance's Hydreigon. What followed was an absolute nightmare. The feral, draconic power of Hydreigon clashed against the powered-up psychic and metallic onslaught of Mega-evolved Metagross. Steven and Lance hollered orders of attacks that shook the entire stadium down to the very foundations. Dust was kicked up in great plumes, sometimes obscuring the action but quickly blown away by a new set of attacks. For 10 whole minutes, the two powerhouses duked it out, trading blows to tire the other out. There was no clear indication of who had the upper hand, and as the commentators talked over the chaos, it appeared that luck might be the tiebreaker to determine the victor. That moment came when Hydreigon dealt a throat chop attack on Metagross. As luck would have it, the draconic beast struck its opponent in the face, while landing a critical hit at the same time. Already exhausted, it was the final blow that sent Metagross crashing to the ground. It did not get up again. Metagross is unable to battle. The winner of this exhibition match is champion Lance Blackthorn. The applause and cheering was thunderous. Ash took the remote and switched off the television. Riolu turned to him. "Master? Is there something on your mind?" The boy didn't respond for a moment. "Riolu, is it wrong for me to seek respect from others?" "I don't think so. It is one thing to be respected by others from one's own actions, but another thing altogether to become narcissistic and demand respect from others when you did nothing to earn it. Why do you ask?" Ash turned to the blank television screen. "Everyone hated me, because I can't speak. Yet seeing Champion Lance, commanding such a powerful team of Dragon-type Pokémon, and the people love him. Riolu, will it go against my duty as a future Aura Guardian if I become like Champion Lance?" It takes a few moments for Riolu to respond. "Well, a regional champion is supposed to look after the citizens of a region, protect them from harm and uphold their well-being, which is not all that different from the duties of an Aura Guardian. However, I have also heard stories of trainees in the distant path who got corrupted when the power and adoration got to their heads." Ash looked down at his hands. "Riolu, can I trust that you will always keep me in line to my true purpose?" "That is my sworn duty, Master. You need not worry." To be continued. It took about a month for Professor Oak to notice the shift in Ash. That wasn't to say that the boy wasn't diligent with his studies before. Far from it, if Oak had anything to say about it. He wished Gary had the same attitude. But there was an additional layer to that diligence, a sense of vigor and desire to learn more than what was already being taught. Particularly about Dragon-type Pokémon. Between his tutoring and sign language lessons, there were PRDS of time where Ash was left to his own devices. Some of it was spent meditating with Riolu, but he also used his free time to scour the multitude of books in the many bookshelves around the laboratory. More often than not, the boy would be so engrossed leafing through the pages that he failed to notice Oak watching him. At first, the researcher was surprised. In every occasion that he had seen Ash reading, it was books that were far too advanced for a regular 4-year-old child. Yet despite that, the boy never once showed signs of a struggle. In fact, Oak soon realized that there was an open dictionary right next to the book that Ash was devouring. The boy would analyze the book's contents, occasionally switch over to the dictionary to find out the meaning of the word or phrase, before returning to the book. Oak had to find out. What has gotten Ash so into studying, more so than before? He waited for one of the break PRDS, before scouring his lab for Ash. Eventually, he found the boy, nose deep in a book, alongside Riolu in one of the empty offices. Ash? Both boy and Riolu turned around. Is everything okay? You've been reading a lot more. Ash signed his response. Dragon-type Pokémon? What's so special about dragon types? With longer sentences, Ash's signing was still a little wonky, but Oak got the gist of it after a moment. You saw Champion Lance's exhibition match and want to be like him? Ash nodded. Well, I can't say that you're the only one in Kanto with such a goal, but dragon types are dangerous, you know? If you're not careful, they could hurt or even kill you. Ash signed again. That's why I need to read. I need to know everything. Oak continued, reading is one thing. Getting to know a real-life dragon type is another altogether. Books can only tell you general information. To truly understand any Pokémon, you must spend time with them. Ash's mouth was slightly agape. That, honestly, never crossed his mind before. Luckily for you, Ash, there is chance. Come, let me introduce you to my Dragonite. It was easy to forget that once upon a time, the revered regional researcher Samuel Oak was once the champion of Kanto and Johto. As a younger man, Oak had assembled a powerhouse of a team, and toppled the then champion with almost comical ease. But after only a year on the throne, Oak became disillusioned. It was stressful work, running 2 regions and facing a multitude of trainers in their bids to dethrone him. He absolutely hated it, so in a move that shocked the populace, he announced his resignation as champion to pursue his dream of Pokémon research. Once he had thrown in the towel, Oak gave a choice to his team. It was very unlikely that they would battle against opponents anymore, so they were free to leave, if they so wished. And a good number actually did, parting ways and returning to the wild. However, Oak's Dragonite, then his most powerful Pokémon, refused to go. So the bipedal dragon took up residence in the then newly established corral, and acted as both a guardian and protector of the young Pokémon who moved in over time. Despite his battling days long past him, Dragonite had plenty of experience to share with a curious Ash. With Riolu translating, the young boy learned about the first meeting between Dragon and Oak, the habits of dragon types like himself, and what he thought was the best way to approach other dragons in real life. And while this was all well and good, Ash instinctually knew this was not enough. From his reading, dragon types were arguably the most dangerous type of Pokémon in the entire world. Professor Oak's statement about injury and death caused by these beasts was an understatement, given the written accounts he'd managed to find. Also, Oak's Dragonite couldn't really be described as a reliable specimen, given how the former powerhouse had mellowed down with age and preferred to snooze under a tree when he wasn't watching over the young residents of the corral. What Ash needed was to observe dragon types when they were still young, full of energy and preferably, aggressive. At the prime of their lives, it would be easier for Ash to understand and learn their individual quirks. That way, he hoped that he will be able to establish a connection with them. However, a problem quickly established itself. Ash had diligently studied the lists of known Pokémon that inhabited the different regions around the world. Kanto had the utter misfortune to have very few dragon types and pseudo-dragons to call its own. Dragonite, along with its 2 previous evolutionary forms, Dratini and Dragonair, are the only pure or dual-type dragons that called Kanto their home. And even then, the chance of encountering one in the wild is incredibly rare. Then there was Charizard, which counted as a pseudo-dragon, but that was provided one got a Charmander as a starter. And given he had Riolu, who technically would be counted as his starter, that was out of the option. There was also no way in hell that he would pursue the possibility of reviving an Aerodactyl from an old amber, if he could even find one in the first place. It would probably take up the better part of his life, and bankrupt his family line for several generations. Ash found himself in a pickle. How was he supposed to become like Champion Lance if he couldn't find any dragon types to connect with? And for a year, the problem swirled around his head like an annoying insect. Even as he became better at meditation, once he returned to the real world, the annoyance would return in an instant. Only a miracle from the heavens could solve this conundrum. According to Riolu, as he became proficient with meditation, he would, slowly, be able to draw out his aura. This was where his physical and emotional fortitude came into play. Due to his young age, his aura is very volatile when physically manifested. He had to control it with a firm grim, so to speak, in order for it to not explode on him. Riolu kept a close watch on his master's aura, and decided that to safely proceed to the next step, they needed to be outside, preferably away from the town to mitigate the possibility of accidents. Ash had the perfect spot. South of the town, stood Pallet Harbor. Many centuries ago, Pallet Harbor was the main commerce point for the entire Kanto region. At that time, cities had not been established yet, and most people lived in small settlements. As Pallet Town was right up on the coast, trade activity brought people and wealth to the area. However, when Vermilion City's port began operations and drew trade away, Pallet Harbor went into decline until it was abandoned about 100 years before Ash was born. The docks stood crumbling against the elements for about 50 years, until the then mayor of Pallet Town saw an opportunity. He had the docks restored and reopened as a leisure and recreation spot. On good days, especially during the summer, the residents of Pallet could be seen having fun on the beach, or using the docks as a diving board. Several weddings have taken place on the docks, and incidentally, Delia wedded her husband there too. As it was around spring, the water was still chilly. The beach was literally deserted when Ash and Riolu showed up after breakfast. They sat down on the wooden boardwalk. Let us immerse ourselves into a state of calm and even breathing. This was something Ash had already come to grips with. After a year of diligent practice, slowing down into mindful peace had become second nature to him. Shifting into posture and position, Ash closed his eyes and followed Riolu's breathing. A breeze blew through, sending a soft chill down his exposed skin. It certainly helped. When you are ready, Master, envision your aura within you. It was easier said than done at the beginning. Ash thought that it involved some complicated form of mental gymnastics to picture one's aura. However, as Riolu later corrected, one simply had to use their imagination to create a mental link with their aura reserves. Of course, Ash saw nothing notable at first. But the more he practiced and got better with his meditation, things started to change. At the beginning, he would see brief flashes of blue light, sometimes strobing and others like little bolts of lightning. Now, it was a large glowing sphere of blue. It was a beautiful sight. If Ash had to compare it to something, it was as if the sun, glowing blue instead of reds, oranges and yellows, crackling with bolts instead of flares, was inside him. He had only been able to reach this visualization for only a month prior, and in Ash's mind, it was well worth the struggle. Now, try to see yourself reaching in towards your aura. When you can, try to draw it out. This was the tricky part. Up until this point, Ash had only seen his aura from a distance. Never once had he tried reaching out to it. He had no idea what it would do to him if he did so. But he also knew that nothing was going to happen unless he tried. Keeping his visual of his aura firm, Ash tried to form his hands into the scene. It took about 5 minutes, but he succeeded. His hands materialized, and then came the next step. It wasn't immediately clear how he was going to reach his aura, since it appeared to be quite a distance away. But Ash was going to try over and over again if necessary. He tried to replicate walking, did not work. Then swimming? Okay, he was getting somewhere. Now. It took a few minutes, but he managed to get close enough to touch his aura. It felt smooth, like refined crystal, with the occasional tingling from the crackling bolts. He placed both hands on the sphere, and there was a great flash of light. Riolu had opened his eyes when he felt a great pulse in the air. He grinned, "You're doing great, Master. Can I open my eyes?" "Sure." Ash opened his eyelids. Oh, wow. Between his hands, a small orb of glowing blue light had manifested in the physical plane. It was no bigger than a baseball, but it was, about there with his internal visual of his aura, one of the most beautiful things he had ever seen. "Good job, Master. Now, try to sustain it for as long as possible." Sustain. Ash remembered from the pages of the dictionary that it meant to hold on to something physically or mentally over a period of time. He concentrated on his mental endurance. The orb of blue energy pulsated and crackled, but it remained the same size, just as Ash wanted. This was fine, he could do this. A soft, pained cry echoed. Ash's breath hitched, breaking his concentration and causing the orb to burst. "Master?" Ash turned to Riolu. "Did you hear that?" Another cry came again. "It's nearby." Ash scrambled to his feet, rushing down the dock in search for the source of the cries. Riolu was quick to follow. They scanned the beach, eyes and ears on alert. Then came a third cry, and Ash spotted something at the water's edge. He rushed towards it, and blanched. It was a Pokémon, specifically a Horsia. Ash winced when he got a good look at the young seahorse Pokémon. It was in terrible shape, as if it had just gotten out of some vicious battle against a predator. Cuts and gashes lined its body, its fins were torn, and its snout appeared to be broken. It was barely breathing, and the seeping blood tinted the water slightly crimson. Riolu came up next to Ash. "This is not good, Master. His life force is dimming. He will die if we do not help him." Ash carefully scooped Horsia into his hands and bolted off back towards town, Riolu following hot on his heels. Pallet Town didn't have its own Pokémon Center, which meant that Professor Oak's laboratory would have to suffice. He just hoped that it was enough to save Horsia. To be continued. It had been a quiet day at the laboratory. As it was a Saturday, only Professor Oak and a couple of assistants had come into work. Still, it was incredibly relaxed and easygoing. No deadlines or projects that needed attending to, just taking things slowly. Oak was just nursing his second mug of coffee. Normally, he'd be throwing back at least 5 on a busy day. On this perfectly ordinary weekend though, he could give his aged kidneys a well-deserved break. The sound of the door slamming open hardly fazed him. "Ash? How may I help Dash?" He almost dropped his mug. "What in Arceus' name, you know what? No, I'll ask later. Follow me, Ash." Making sure to set his mug away from his important documents and laptop, Oak strode out of the office briskly, followed close by Ash and Riolu. Without knocking, Oak entered the medical wing of the laboratory. "Carolyn, we have an emergency. Serious bodily injuries." The lab's medical assistant dropped whatever she was doing, carefully took Horsia from Ash's hands, and carried the seahorse Pokémon towards an operating table. From a console, she pressed several buttons in a specific combination. A glass lid came over the table, and several metallic tubes attached themselves to it. Water poured from the tubes, filling the containment up to the brim. Immediately replaced with soft beams of orange light, the healing process got underway. "Come Ash, let's leave Carolyn to take care of Horsia." Oak guided the young boy back to his office. "Now tell me, how did you find Horsia?" Ash signed, Pallet Harbor. "What were you and Riolu doing there?" "I was overseeing my master's aura training," Riolu replied telepathically. He was attempting to physically manifest his aura for the first time. His aura must have picked up Horsia's cries. Oak nodded. That was as good an answer as any. "Professor," Ash signed again, "how did Horsia end up here? I thought they lived near the Seafoam Islands." "You're right Ash," Oak nodded. "I can think of several theories. 1, it might have gotten separated from its herd and was attacked by predators before it washed up at the harbor. 2, that it was abandoned. Now, if it were a shiny, it will be easier to pinpoint this theory since Pokémon have been known to abandon their shiny offspring. However, this Horsia is a normal specimen, which makes it difficult to rely on that theory alone." A knock came from the door. The medical assistant entered. "Carolyn, how is the Horsia?" "It will make a full recovery, Professor," Carolyn replied. However, one of the scans picked up something interesting. "What do you mean?" "The scan showed that Horsia has a developmental disorder. I did some further investigating, and it appears the disorder has impacted Horsia's ability to verbally communicate." Ash's eyes widened. "Interesting," Oak rubbed his chin. "Thank you for informing me, Carolyn. You may go." The assistant took her leave. Ash signed, "Professor, was Horsia abandoned because of this disorder?" "Possible," Oak nodded. "Just like some humans, Pokémon do abandon offspring that show signs of disability. It is a sad fact, but it does happen." Ash nodded. It was not unexpected for other living beings to carry so much hate towards others, even their own offspring. "What will happen to Horsia?" "In normal circumstances, we would have released it back to the wild," Oak replied. "However, we can't guarantee Horsia's continued survival if we do so. For now at least, Horsia will stay here in the corral." "But what if the other Pokémon at the corral hate Horsia too?" "True," Oak rubbed his chin again. "How about this? Why don't you take in Horsia once it is healed? I can lend you one of my tanks." "Really? Is that okay? I'm sure your mother will understand. Also, I think it will be a great opportunity for you to get to know a Pokémon that will be part Dragon-type in its final evolutionary form." Ash's eyes widened a second time. He had completely forgotten about that. "I knew that you would be interested," Oak chuckled. "Still going strong with Dragon-types?" Ash signed, "You bet." The tank was set up and filled by day's end. Horsia was brought over from the laboratory and gently placed into its new home. As the healing procedure had sapped out much of its energy, the seahorse Pokémon sunk to the bottom and laid there, shifting only with the movement of the water. Ash and Riolu left it alone to let it rest. Come the new day, they woke up early to check on Horsia. The young Pokémon was up, but incredibly confused with its new surroundings. It sloshed around the tank, trying to make sense of how it got there. Ash turned to Riolu. I don't think it will understand sign language. I'll try to communicate with it, Master. Riolu hopped onto the table where the tank stood, and scaled up the glass walls until he perched himself onto the edge. Horsia peeked its head out of the water. Riolu spoke to it in his natural tongue, while Ash waited by the side. As expected, Horsia replied by either nodding or shaking its head. Finally, Riolu hopped down onto the table, and turned back to Ash. Horsia asked how he got here. Tell him that we found him, injured at Pallet Harbor. We took him to get healed, and brought him here to rest. Riolu relayed Ash's words back. Horsia appeared to consider the response for a moment. Riolu then used his aura to pick up what the young seahorse wanted to communicate. There was some back and forth, before Riolu said, he wants to know what we want to do with him. He can stay as long as he likes. I hope that we can become friends. Riolu relayed Ash's message. Horsia appeared pensive, sinking back into the water and hovering to one corner of the tank. Was it something I said? No, Master. I think this whole situation is a lot for him. He needs time to think. Let's leave him be for now. For about a week, a sort of probation period existed between Horsia and his new hosts. Ash and Delia made sure to feed him thrice a day, but other than to eat, the young aquatic Pokémon didn't appear to do much. Horsia just floated around in the tank, as if in deep thought. Ash remembered Riolu's words, and it made sense. But he also thought it should be fine just to check on Horsia and see how he was doing. He and Riolu had an intense training session the day before, so the young Aura Pokémon was still asleep when Ash woke up. Being careful not to wake him up, Ash headed downstairs to the living room. Inside the tank, Horsia was aimlessly floating around. For a moment, Ash wondered how he was going to communicate with Horsia. He wasn't skilled enough with his aura to communicate telepathically like Riolu could. And he wasn't sure if Horsia, or Pokémon in general, could understand sign language. But, the latter option was all he had now. Unless he tried and failed, he wouldn't know the outcome. Ash went over to the tank, and gently tapped on the glass. Horsia turned to him, rising up and poking his head above the water. The young boy signed, "Hello Horsia, how are you doing?" Horsia nodded. Ash wasn't sure what that meant. He hoped that Horsia was communicating that it was doing fine, but he couldn't be sure. My name is Ash, by the way. My hands speak for me. Just like you, I can't speak with my mouth. This is what we call sign language. Though, I don't know if you actually understand what I'm signing. Horsia nodded again. Ash blinked. Do you actually understand what I'm signing? Another nod. His hand stilled for a moment, before signing, Horsia, I'm going to try something, okay? Can you show me what number this is? He made the hand signal for the number 8. To his absolute amazement, Horsia bopped his snout against the water exactly 8 times. Ash was completely floored. He squatted down, hands together under his nose as if he was praying. Horsia peered over the edge curiously. Master? Riolu had come down from the stairs, only to find Ash acting weird next to the tank. Riolu, you're not gonna believe this. Horsia can understand sign language. A beat of silence. Come again? To be continued. Ash, my boy, are you saying that Horsia can understand sign language? Oak asked in sheer disbelief. The young boy turned to the seahorse Pokémon and signed, splashed the water 5 times. Horsia did as instructed. Oak was hit hard with amazement, forcing him to grab the sofa backrest to stop himself from falling to the floor. Amazing. Simply amazing. A Pokémon that can understand non-verbal communication. This is completely unprecedented. Who knows how many other Pokémon out there have this ability? The possibility of new research and data thrilled the professor. However, scientific discoveries were far from the top priority for Ash and Riolu. If Horsia was willing, Ash could begin to build up his team of dragon types and train their movesets. Professor, can you help me check what are Horsia's learned moves? Most certainly, Ash. Oak replied, just give me a moment. The professor whipped out the standard-issue Kanto Pokédex and aimed the scanner at Horsia. After a few seconds, an automated voice played, Horsia, the baby seahorse Pokémon. It is known to shoot down flying insects with precision blasts of ink from the water's surface. This specimen has a developmental disorder that hinders verbal communication, is male, and has the sniper ability. Horsia's current moveset includes Water Gun, Bubble, Leer, Smokescreen, and the Locked Egg move Aurora Beam. Interesting, Oak rubbed his chin, an unusual egg move for a future half-dragon type, but not entirely impossible. Ash tapped the man's arm and signed, "Will it take long for Horsia to evolve?" "I can't say for sure, Ash. Every Pokémon is different, and some take longer or shorter than others to evolve. However, Horsia in the wild are known to evolve into Seadra relatively quickly. The difficult part comes when you want to evolve a Seadra into a Kingdra, as Dragon Scale is required, and they are extremely rare." Riolu turned to Horsia, and activated his aura. Horsia says that it does not matter. He wants to get stronger first. "Well, I can't say anything against that," Oak chuckled. There was one small problem that Ash realized not long after. It was an incredible strength on Horsia's part to be able to understand sign language. However, in the setting of a Pokémon battle, this could prove costly since Horsia would have to constantly look back towards Ash for instructions, wasting precious seconds which could cause Horsia to lose the battle. After some discussion with Riolu, an arrangement was decided. Ash would give Riolu instructions through their telepathic connection, and Riolu was deliver the order to Horsia through his aura. Essentially, Riolu would be the mouthpiece. They practiced with this arrangement once Horsia was fit enough to leave the tank for a PRD of time. Locations alternated between Oak's laboratory corral and the natural environment outside of Pallet Town. The former was used primarily at the beginning. Ash wanted to test the strength and range of Horsia's attacks, and the corral was the optimum location for a controlled test environment. At first, Horsia's water gun and bubble attacks were rather mediocre, not surprising given his young age. Ash and Riolu had Horsia swim laps around the corral's pond in order to build up his strength and stamina. Over time and with consistent training, water gun and bubble became stronger and could be sustained longer. This laid the groundwork for more moves that Horsia would learn in the future. Ash shifted Horsia's training to the latter location once his two main attacks became strong enough. The fields and meadows outside of Pallet Town had plenty of rocks, boulders and old tree stumps that Horsia could use as target practice. The goal became for Horsia to continue building up his strength in order to blast these targets to smithereens. It would take time, but given how Ash and Riolu often had to cajole Horsia back to his tank to rest, they didn't need to worry about him losing steam anytime soon. It wasn't just Horsia who strove to become stronger. As Ash grew older, the time came for him to build up his own physical strength. His body needed to be strong to safely contain his aura reserves that would progressively expand with time. If he remained weak, one single outburst was all that was needed to blow his body apart. And it just so happened that an exercise gym opened in Pallet Town when Ash was 6. Membership was free, as the gym was funded by taxpayers. Soon, it became a common sight to see Ash engaging in lightweight training with dumbbells and assisted machinery. He stayed clear of the treadmills, since he still wasn't tall enough to see the control panel, so he left his cardio to long jogs around town and the surrounding fields. With time, his weights will get heavier, and more sets pumped through. His running distances will also grow longer, his stamina leveling up in turn. Ash's days became incredibly packed. Between his private tutoring and all the physical training, the only free time he really had was just before he went to bed. Even the weekends were spent doing his own self-study and training. On the bright side, it did allow him his 8 hours every night without interruption. The routine would see itself repeated for several years, right up until Ash reached his preteen years. Then, come the age of 12, it was time for the next step in his journey. To be continued. Riolu? Yes, Master? We have known each other for about 6 years already. We've gone through so many experiences together, along with Horsia. We have grown and changed together. I think it is time that we move beyond our current dynamics. In what way? I want to give you and Horsia a name each. Names? We'll be starting our journey next year, and we will probably meet plenty of Pokémon out there. I want to be able to distinguish between my team and the wild Pokémon. What do you think? It's reasonable. I am willing. For you, I think Luca is a good name. Not only does it symbolize your final evolutionary form, but it also means shining brightness. Our aura shines like the sun, so I thought it fits. I like that name. I will carry it as a title of honor, Riolu replied. What about Horsia? I was thinking about Kai for Horsia, Ash said. In the Alolan language, it means the sea. Kai is also the short form of Kame, which in Old Galarian means a warrior. Horsia has survived many trials, and emerged stronger than before. I see the connection, and I think it fits too. We should let your mother and Professor Oak know so they can call us with our new names accordingly. For children in the Kanto region, the age of 12 was a special number for them. On the year of their 12th birthday, they are legally allowed by Cantonian law to become licensed Pokémon trainers. The age limit used to be 10 in the past. However, there was a significant increase in the number of incidents where new trainers had to be rescued from perilous situations, got involved in organized crime, or suffered serious injury and even death on the road. Things got so bad that once Lance Blackthorne took the mantle of champion, he and his Elite Four unanimously voted to raise the age limit to 12 in a bid to curb the number of incidents and give aspiring trainers more time to prepare themselves for a potentially difficult journey ahead. Needless to say, come his 12th year on the planet, Ash and his team were prepared. Kai had evolved into a Seadra 2 years back. He had mastered Water Gun and Bubble, his focus shifting towards perfecting more powerful moves such as Bubble Beam and Hydro Pump, among others learned from technical machines generously provided by Professor Oak. Ash too had seen through significant growth over 7 years. While he had yet to feel the full impact of PBRTY, he was no longer the short, skinny boy of 5. His arms and legs were corded with lean muscle, and he had a growth spurt that took him past the 160-centimeter mark. His hair was longer, falling to his shoulders. Some of it is tied up into a ponytail at the top, while the rest falls naturally. His sense of style has evolved too. As a child, Ash favored baggier clothing to hide the various injuries sustained from continuous bullying. Now, as he approached adolescence, his choice of clothing became more tight-fitting. Come the day of his departure, Ash got dressed. Sporting a short-sleeved compression top with red lining, matching black tights with white swirls running down the legs, and a pair of shorts that fell short of the knees on top of the leggings. At the front porch, he slipped into a pair of top-quality running sneakers, generously provided by Professor Oak, and jogged the way up towards the laboratory. Oak had something to pass to him, a parting gift, so to speak. The man himself was busy with some papers as Ash entered. "Ah, there you are, my boy. Right on time. What is it that you wanted to give to me, Professor?" Oak got up from his chair, went to another corner of the room, and picked up a box from a table. It was not that large, about the size of an A5 sheet of paper. "Go ahead and open it, Ash." The preteen pulled the lid off. Inside of the box, nestled within protective foam sheets, was a handheld device that looked all intents and purposes like a standard smartphone. As his hands were occupied, Ash gave Oak a questioning look. "It may look like a smartphone, but let me assure you, it will become something more. Take it out of the box, and hold it up. Our friend should be on its way over soon." Ash raised an eyebrow, but did as he was instructed. What could Oak mean? The man's laptop at the other end of the room chimed with an incoming email. "Ah?" Oak beamed, "That's our friend. Rowan sure knows how to do things quickly." Suddenly, something burst out of the laptop screen. It blitzed around the room, zipping around so fast that Ash could hardly make out what it was. All he could tell was that it was orange in color, and it left a trail of blue light in its wake. Then, whatever it was shot straight towards the phone. It disappeared into the device so hard that Ash almost dropped it. Instead, it jumped out of his hand and stood there, hovering in the air. He did drop the box, though. With his hands now free, he could sign again. "Professor, what in Arceus name was that?" "That, Ash, is a Rotom. Native to the Sinnoh, and also found in the Kalos and Galar regions, it is a dual electric and ghost-type Pokémon that often possesses electronic devices and causes all kinds of mischief and havoc with them. However, a certain type of Rotom have been designed to inhabit certain devices and give them a wider purpose. In this case, Rotom has possessed the phone to turn it into what the people in Galar call a Rotom phone." Ash blinked, before signing. "Quite an unimaginative name, isn't it?" "Admittedly, yes, but that's neither here nor there. I think Rotom is almost done assimilating into the device." The hovering phone produced a horn that resembled a lightning bolt at the top, and a little knob at the bottom. Rotom's face formed at the back, and its mouth widened into a cheeky smile. "BZZT. Setup complete. Hello there, user Ash. I am Rotom Phone, your trusty traveling device for short and long journeys ahead." Ash signed, "Nice to meet you too, Rotom." Rotom spun twice, and vibrated for a moment. "Download complete. Comprehensive sign language module added into database. I can now be your interpreter for those who are unfamiliar with your mode of communication." "Fascinating work, when Pokemon and technology come together, isn't it?" Oak remarked. "Rotom, tell us what other features you have." "Right away, Professor Oak. Not only am I user Ash's interpreter, I also have a GPS map, a satellite video call function that allows instant communication without requiring user Ash to stop at Pokemon centers if he needs to call someone, an e-wallet for contactless transactions, a weather app that keeps track of daily forecasts, and most importantly, a Pokédex function that will allow user Ash to document every Pokemon he encounters, and an e-folder containing scanned copies of the signed official documents allowing Luca To be user Ash's communicator during sanctioned battles and 1 extra Pokeball slot on top of the allowed 6 in order for Luca to remain by user Ash's side at all times. Thank you, Rotom, Oak nodded, before turning to Ash. Now, I know that I can only expect Dragon-type Pokémon from your travels, my boy. However, if you're willing to entertain an aging man's request, if you spot anything unusual in the wild, be it Pokémon or phenomena, I would like for you to document it with Rotom and have the data sent straight to me. Is that alright with you? That's fine with me, Professor. I'll do my best. Excellent. Oak beamed. Now, as a final gift, your mother and I want to start you off with 2,000 Poke Dollars. You can earn money by battling other trainers you meet on your journey, or by signing up for the Indigo Conference, if you so wish. Do make sure to spend your money wisely, though. I will, Professor. This is already so much more than I could ask for. No trouble, my boy. Just have out there, and be safe, okay? Definitely, Professor. I'll be in touch. Ash made his farewells, and with Rotom hovering after him, he jogged out of the laboratory, jogged down the hill, and crossed town to get back to his house. Delia was already waiting at the porch, along with Luca and Kai. In her arms, she carried the duffel bag containing several changes of clothes, a day's worth of food, a first aid pouch, and camping equipment for occasions where he had to hunker down in the open. How do you like your gift, Ash? I love it, Mum. I can tell already that Rotom is going to be an invaluable help during my journey. Delia grinned. I'm glad. Now, here's your bag. Do be safe out there, okay? Ash took the bag and slung it across his torso. I will, Mum. The roar of an engine rumbled nearby. Ash and Delia turned to see a gleaming new Cadillac rolling down the street past their house. A large crowd of residents followed the car, cheering and shouting farewells and good lucks. A crew of cheerleaders took up the back seats, while a familiar brunette took the front passenger seat with a chauffeur at the wheel. Ah, looks like Gary is leaving for his journey too. Ash sighed through the nose. Gary Oak was unlike most of the preteens in Pallet Town. As the grandson of Professor Oak, he claimed a high status within the town boundaries. He had everything, material wealth and knowledge, the latter only Ash is comparable with. Gary had virtually everyone eating out of his hand, and his head was, understandably, metaphorically enormous. On the bright side though, Gary saw himself as far too above bullying someone like Ash back during the daycare years. Ash was not even worth a moment's glance from the grandson of Professor Oak, and it suited both boys well. They kept their distance, and peace remained between them for years. The Cadillac drove off, and the crowd disappeared from sight. I guess that's that, Delia shrugged, turning to her son. You better get going, otherwise it will be late by the time you reach Viridian City. Take care, okay? Same to you, Mum. Ash unzipped his bag and pulled out Kai's Pokeball. Returning the Seadra inside, he hooked the Pokeball to his belt. Rotom zipped into one of his pockets for safekeeping. I'll be off now. Call me when you reach Viridian, okay? I will. Mother and son shared a final hug. Ash pulled back, and with a wave, he and Luca set off. As he jogged down the street, he passed by the returning townsfolk, all chattering about how Gary was going to live up to his grandfather's name and bring glory and honor to their town. Ash ignored everything, including the looks he got from them. Once he and his support partner passed through the town boundaries, they slowed down to a more sedate pace. Master, what are your current plans? I hope to get to Viridian City by day's end, stay the night at the Pokemon Center, and take a cross-regional bus to Vermilion City. Then I'll buy a ferry ticket towards Fuchsia City and head off to the Safari Zone. You hope to catch a Dratini there, right? Yep. Then I'll spend time training my team and perhaps battle trainers to earn money. I hope to travel abroad to find more dragon types to add to my team someday. Also, we'll probably wander around and help those in need of assistance. I am happy that you did not forget your duties as an Aura Guardian in training, Master. How can I? I've been training for years for this specific purpose. The journey through Route 1 was relatively peaceful for the first half hour. A couple of wild Pidgeys flew overhead with the wind, and Ash saw a lone Rattata scampering across the dirt road in front of them before dashing into the bushes. There was nobody about, until some rustling came from a nearby shrub. Ash blinked as a young boy, probably no more than 8, jumped out of the foliage and blocked his path. Aha! A trainer. Battle me, right now. Ash raised an eyebrow. Rotom flew out of his pocket to translate as he began to sign, aren't you a bit too young to be a trainer? If the boy was surprised at the lack of verbal response from Ash, he didn't show it. I have Mum and Dad's permission to battle trainers I make eye contact with. So battle me, right now. I won't take no for an answer. Ash stopped himself from rolling his eyes. Might as well get this over and done with. He signed, and Rotom translated, fine, one-on-one battle. Send out your Pokemon. I won't lose. Butterfree, go! An average-sized Butterfree burst out of its Pokeball. Immediately, Rotom scanned it. Butterfree, the butterfly Pokémon. The final evolutionary form of Caterpie, it flaps its wings at high speeds to release toxic dust into the air to ward off predators. Ash unhooked Kai's Pokeball from his belt, and let him out. Both the boy and Butterfree flinched when the intimidating draconic seahorse materialized into the open, giving them both a hard, unrelenting look. Butterfree, use Gust. Ash telepathically transferred Kai's instruction. Kai, use Hydro Pump. The Seadra was still mastering that particular move, so the deluge of water wasn't as strong as it would be at full power. However, it still did its job well. Butterfree was blasted away, smashing into a nearby tree with considerable force. It slid down the trunk, and flopped onto the ground, unconscious. Butterfree, the boy wailed, rushing to his fallen Pokémon. Ash signed, nice job, Kai. We'll keep practicing. The Seadra nodded. Ash went to help the unconscious Butterfree, but the boy had already returned it into its Pokeball and fled, wailing loudly. A moment later, a chime rang from Rotom. Transaction complete. 31 Pokedollars have been transferred into user Ash's e-wallet. Not a bad start, Ash thought to himself. It was a pity, though, that he couldn't at least treat Butterfree's injuries before the boy ran off with it. Recalling Kai back into his Pokeball, Ash and Luca continued on for about another 2 hours. Along the way, they encountered 2 other young children, another boy and 1 girl, and battled them too. Both were extremely fast experiences. Kai blasted the boy's Rattata with another Hydro Pump, and Luca blew the girl's Nidron away with an overpowered Aura Sphere. From both battles, Ash accumulated another 70 Pokedollars. Although he was once again unable to help treat the unconscious Pokemon as the 2 children ran off crying for their parents before he could offer assistance. Come noon, with the sun at the highest in the sky and temperatures beginning to soar, Ash figured that now was better than ever to take a break. Seeking refuge under a tree, he released Kai and set about getting their lunches out. Ash poured out a sizable portion of Pokemon food out for his team, before digging into the bento his mother made for him. He made sure to savor it. Only Arceus knows when he will next get to enjoy his mother's cooking once more. Conveniently, there was a small stream nearby for Ash to wash his team's food bowls. His own bento was disposable, so once they got moving, Ash was on the lookout for any rubbish bins along the route. He never expected the loud, draconic roar and almighty splash that came further down the stream. Master, someone might be in trouble, said Luca. The stream widened into a river further down, and as Ash and team rushed into the general area where the loud roar originated, they were greeted with a scene of absolute carnage. What was previously a picturesque fork in the river with banks of foliaged land had been completely torn up. The bridge that ran across the river before the fork was completely smashed, the pieces half sunken into the water. Trees had either been uprooted whole or blasted into 2. Big chunks of earth was missing from the banks, and smoke rose from charred spots of grass. But perhaps the most shocking sight was that of a teenage red-headed girl, slightly older than Ash, crouching next to a terribly injured Staryu. All 5 of its legs were bent and twisted in unnatural angles, and the red jewel in its center was cracked. The girl was hysterical, desperately trying to stop the blood from seeping out of her Pokemon's wounds. Ash immediately headed towards the river, Rotom zipping out of his pocket. The water went past his waist, but getting wet meant nothing for him. The girl heard his splashes as he waded across. Are you a trainer? Please help me. Ash began signing, Rotom translating. Miss, what happened here? I was fishing when I suddenly reeled in an angry Gyarados. It went berserk, and it completely trashed my Staryu. I only escaped injury because it dove back into the river and swam away. Please help, I didn't bring any potions with me. Ash climbed onto the bank, and sat his slightly soaked bag down. He pulled out his first aid pouch and examined Staryu's injuries. The starfish Pokemon trembled slightly. Ash activated his aura and gently infused the energy into Staryu's body to soothe it as he applied the potion. What are you doing? Luca stepped forth and activated his aura. My master is using his aura to calm down your companion. Rest assured, he is doing what he can. Once all the wounds were disinfected and the bleeding stopped, Ash put the potion spray bottle away. He turned to the girl and signed. Rotom translated, you need to bring Staryu to the Pokemon Center. I'm not trained in advanced medical treatment. Still, the girl was grateful, thank you so much. I'm not sure what aura is, but you're a lifesaver. Thank you. She returned Staryu into a Pokeball and took a few steps forward. She suddenly stopped, and screamed, my bike. It's completely toasted. True enough, the charred, twisted remains of a bicycle lay crumpled a few meters away. It was smoking liberally, and it appeared as if a single touch was all that was needed for it to crumble into ashes. Rotom translated, I'm sorry about your bike. I can't fix it, unfortunately. The girl forced a grin, it's okay, I guess I'll just have to run. Thank you again. And run she did. Poor girl, what are the chances of reeling in a Gyarados from a river? Very tiny. Gyarados don't tend to inhabit rivers. They are more likely to live in lakes or out in the ocean. Ash glanced at the ruined landscape. I don't know how this one managed to get here, but I think we should let Professor Oak know about this. He turned to Rotom, and signed, can you put me on a video call to Professor Oak, please? Right away, user Ash. An electronic dial tone rang for a few moments before the call was picked up. Ash, my boy. Is there something you need? Hey Professor Oak, you're not going to believe this, but I'm at the site of a serious Gyarados attack. A Gyarados attack? But judging from your current location, you're just half an hour away from the suburbs of Viridian City. That's the thing, Professor. I came across a fork in a river that was completely wrecked by an out-of-control Gyarados that a teenage girl fished out of the water. Her Staryu was seriously injured, and her bicycle was completely roasted. I don't know how a Gyarados managed to find itself so far inland, but as long as it remains in the wild, it could pose a danger to people and Pokémon alike. Professor Oak nodded solemnly, duly noted, Ash. I will contact Officer Jenny and inform her of this rogue Gyarados. Meanwhile, I want you to leave the area and head to Viridian immediately. Don't hang around too long, the Gyarados might still be nearby. I will, Professor. I'll call you again when I reach Viridian City. I'll be waiting. Talk to you later, Ash. The call ended. Let's go, Master. You heard Professor Oak. Ash nodded. To be continued. Ash made quick work trekking towards Viridian City. He wanted to get there before sundown. A rogue Gyarados was not something one wanted to encounter if they were forced to camp out in the open at night. He reached the edge of the suburbs about 20 minutes later. However, Ash never expected an Officer Jenny to step out of a guard post and intercept his path. Sir, I need you to identify yourself and state your business in Viridian City. Ash blinked. What was going on? Also, why is your Pokémon not in its Pokeball? Jenny pointed at Luca. Rotom zipped out of Ash's pocket, trainer and aura. Guardian in training Ash Ketchum has special dispensation from Professor Samuel Oak to have his starter Pokémon act as both a communicator during sanctioned battles and his interpreter in the event that I am unable to perform my duties. Ash Ketchum is mute and relies on sign language to communicate. As you can see, the scanned copy of this document is on my screen. Jenny scrutinized the scanned document, and what is your business in Viridian City? Ash signed, and Rotom translated, to stay the night, that's all. Jenny nodded, that is fine. You're free to enter. There was something Ash needed to know. Rotom translated again, what is going on in Viridian City, Officer Jenny? She sighed, my apologies, things have been incredibly tense in the city recently. There has been a huge spike in crimes where unknown perpetrators have been stealing Pokémon, sometimes in broad daylight. So far, we have yet to establish a clear picture of the thieves, whether they are working on their own or as part of a larger syndicate. And even with increased patrols, the crimes still show no sign of abating. Ash was stunned. Mr. Ketchum, it would reassure me a lot more if you were escorted to your destination instead of getting there by yourself. Do you intend to head to the Pokémon Center? Ash nodded. All right, come along, I'll take you there myself. Aren't you supposed to take care of the guard post? My shift is almost over. The next attendant will be coming in a few minutes, said Jenny. That was as good a reason as any. Ash got into the passenger seat of a motorcycle sidecar. Officer Jenny revved up the engine and sped off down the road. Houses and lawns flew past, and as time passed, the urban sprawl became denser. Taller buildings soon dominated the landscape, and traffic became heavier as the evening rush hour approached. Given Viridian City's comparatively larger size, it took about an hour for Officer Jenny to pull up at the steps leading towards the city's Pokémon Center. Ash and Luca got out onto the pavement. He signed, thanks for the ride, Officer Jenny. No trouble, stay safe, all right? Ash nodded, waving as Jenny sped off down the road. He climbed the steps and made his way inside. Thankfully, there was no queue at the front counter where Nurse Joy was working on a computer. His approaching footsteps prompted the nurse to look up from the screen. Oh. Good evening, young man. How may I help you? Ash signed, and Rotom translated, I would like to have my Pokémon healed, and a room for the night. Right away. Nurse Joy stood up from her seat. She went to get a Pokeball tray, and placed it on the counter. Luca hopped down from Ash's shoulder, and he placed Kai's Pokeball into the tray. Chansey, we have Pokémon to heal. The egg Pokémon, wearing a nurse's hat, took the tray and ambled off back. Nurse Joy sat back down on her chair. Can I have some identification, please? Rotom displayed Ash's trainer card, allowing Joy to register him into the system. Once that was settled, she handed over a key. Enjoy your stay. The cafeteria is down the hallway on your left, and I will make an announcement to let you know when your Pokémon are ready. Ash signed his thanks, and took the key. Rotom zipped back into his pocket, and he headed towards the elevators. His key had a tag that indicated his room was on the 3rd floor, so he went up, and began searching. He found the right door after a short while, and stepped inside. The room was quite basic, which was the standard of Pokémon centers. They weren't meant to be luxury hotels for the privileged elite. They were supposed to be affordable so that anyone with weary bones could stay without worrying too much about prices. Any expenses incurred during the month are subsidized by the league, allowing most centers to run smoothly without much concern about their financial situations. Ash sat his bag down onto the single bed, pulled a fresh set of sleepwear, and headed into the bathroom for a much-needed shower. He had just gotten out, feeling much more refreshed and clean, when the announcement came. Ash Ketchum, your Pokémon are ready for collection. Making sure to take his key and Rotom with him, Ash left his room and headed down to the main lobby. Nurse Joy was at the front desk with the tray containing Kai's Pokeball and Luca, all healed up. Thank you, Nurse Joy, Ash signed, as he took back his team. No trouble. It's my job, after all. Glass shattered, interrupting Nurse Joy. Something landed near the front desk and exploded, releasing plumes of smoke that rapidly engulfed the lobby. Ash coughed violently, his throat drying from the acrid clouds. Master, I think those were smoke grenades. Luca warned, we're under attack. Prepare for trouble, came an unfamiliar female voice. And make it double, a male voice continued. As the smoke cleared somewhat, 3 figures came into view, 2 humans and 1 Pokémon that Ash recognized as a Meowth. The 2 humans were dressed in white uniforms with red RS printed on the chests, black gloves and boots. The man had cornflower blue hair that fell short of his shoulders, and the woman had long magenta hair styled in an exaggerated curl down to her knees. Are these the criminals that Officer Jenny mentioned earlier? Ash wondered, as Nurse Joy ran off to call the authorities and secure the Pokémon held in the recuperation ward. The man released a coughing, and the woman an Eakins. Fighting for justice, little boy, the woman crooned, you won't stand a chance. She never got to say anything else. Luca activated his aura, and the entire lobby was blanketed in the shining blue energy. Ash looked around, everything seemed to have been frozen. From the smoke, to the criminals and their Pokémon. Even Nurse Joy, who appeared to be running back into the main lobby, had become a statue. Luca, what did you do? I froze time, Master, the Riolu explained, when you are more experienced with your own aura, you will be able to do this too within a limited space area. Is this our chance to escape and call Officer Jenny? Asked Ash. No, Master, Luca shook his head, this is a chance for redemption. Redemption? Luca, what are you talking about? These 3 are possibly the criminals going around Viridian City and stealing Pokémon. An ability of aura is to read minds and view memories, the Riolu explained. My aura is strong enough to immediately view the pasts of these 3 individuals. Ash did not miss how his partner didn't refer to the trio as criminals, and let me tell you, Master, all 3 come from difficult backgrounds. Luca pointed to the man, James Wellington, only child of an aristocratic, wealthy family that goes back many generations. Grew up in a rigid, stifling environment of etiquette, unreasonable expectations, and proper behavior. Forced into a marriage of convenience with a girl who bears an uncanny resemblance to his current partner in crime, and fled with only his beloved Growlithe who has unfortunately met an untimely demise several years ago. Joined Team Rocket out of desperation. It only got worse from there. Jessie Miyamoto never knew her father, who ran away after her mother became PRGNNT with her. Jessie would only know her mother for 5 years. As a high-ranking member of Team Rocket, the mother went on an important mission and never came home. Jessie was sent to an orphanage that struggled to stay afloat, and she often ate snow since that was the only sustenance during the winter months. She tried to pursue a livelihood, but was met with roadblocks each and every time. She joined Team Rocket since she had no other option of survival. And finally, there was the Meowth. Meowth's backstory shares a number of similarities with your childhood, Master. Abandoned as a kitten, he was constantly starving and abused by people who saw him as a trouble-causing stray. In a bid to make a life for himself, Meowth taught himself English, but was seen as a freak by humans and Pokémon alike. And just like Jessie and James, he joined Team Rocket because he had no other choice. Ash was at a loss for words. Life has not been kind to these 3, but we stand a fork in the road. We could either let the police take them away to prison where they will fester for the rest of their lives, or we can show them compassion and kindness that very few have done before. But what exactly do we do? Won't the police come after us then for concealing their crimes? I'm fairly certain that your mother wouldn't mind some company around the house. It will also give these three the chance to live a normal life. Also, remember how I said that aura can be used to read minds and memories? For those who possess the power and strength, one can also alter memories. I should be able to make Nurse Joy believe that the smoke was due to a random hooligan looking to cause trouble and chaos, not these three. It made sense, and it did help to soothe Ash's worries. Now came the matter of persuading Jesse, James and Meowth to give up their criminal livelihood. Can you help, Luca? As always. The Riolu did something with his aura, unfreezing time around the Team Rocket trio, while keeping the rest of the lobby frozen. What the hell just happened? Meowth spluttered. Luca activated his inner voice, I froze time. We just want to talk. You three don't have to resort to crime just to live. James was stunned, a telepathic Pokémon? Jesse, however, was more suspicious. What on earth are you talking about? Are you just trying to distract us? If we wanted to distract you, I would have kept you frozen while my master goes to call the police. My name is Luca, and I am a Riolu with strong aura abilities. My aura allows me to read minds and see past memories. I was able to see your different, but no less difficult circumstances that you three have gone through to arrive at the present. Jesse was immediately on the defensive. Why you know nothing? Ms. Miyamoto, I know that you wanted to pursue different professions, especially nursing, but you were denied your dream no matter where you turned. Jesse flinched back. Mr. Wellington, you just wanted to live your life on your own terms, but your family stifled your freedom in the name of tradition. James' mouth fell open. And Meowth, you just wanted to live a normal life without worrying about your next meal, but the world treated you horribly from all corners. Ash felt his heart twinge when he saw tears gather in the cat Pokémon's eyes, possibly due to the surfacing of bad memories. I know that it is difficult to see hope in such a bleak world, but I want to reassure you that hope still exists. My master wishes to make an offer to you three. Ash signed, my mother lives all alone in a house that is supposed to accommodate a big family. My father disappeared from the picture when it was clear that I was born mute. She is the only human family I have, and I don't want her to be lonely. I'm sure she will love your company around the house. Rotom had emerged from Ash's pocket and translated. James bit back a gasp. Really? Do you mean that? How do we know you're not luring us into a trap? Jesse remained suspicious, but Ash could see the guarded look of hope in her eyes. Ash signed again, and Rotom translated, I am an Aura Guardian in training. It is against my duties to lie and deceive. Here, Ash produced a small orb of his own aura to prove his point. There is no need to darken your lives by committing crimes. You can live freely with love and support from a woman who has plenty to give. I extend this proposition not out of pity, I really want to help you improve your lives. What do you say? Meowth had one question, will there be food? Ash blinked, and signed, you are not always allowed to eat? We do, it's just that grunts like us are not allowed much, James readily admitted. Another reason why you should. Stay with my mom, Ash continued, she will ensure that your stomachs are always full. Once Rotom translated, Meowth and James looked as if Christmas had come early for them. Seeing that she was outnumbered, though it was more because the sound of a home-cooked meal was really appealing right now, Jesse slowly relaxed. Do you have any spare clothes? Ash asked in sign, I think the RS are pretty recognizable. We can just take off the jackets, said James, and he immediately did so, as did Jesse. Ash outstretched a hand, and the pair tossed the jackets over to him. I'll dispose them for you, Ash continued, I suggest you leave immediately and head to Pallet Town. That's where I live. Look for house number, I'll let my mum know that you three will be showing up. James rubbed the tears from his eyes before they could fall, kid, I don't know how to thank you. You've done so much for us, more than anyone else has done before. You can thank me by becoming good people who live good lives, Ash signed and Rotom translated, that's all I ask of you. Unable to stop himself, Meowth rushed over and hugged Ash's legs, blubbering incoherent thank yous while crying liberally. Ash bent down and pulled the cat Pokémon into a proper hug, Luca hopping down from his trainer's shoulder to join the hug. James and Jesse returned coughing and Ekans into their Pokeballs, as Ash coaxed Meowth to return to them. The trio quickly left the Pokémon Center, leaving Ash and Luca to apply damage control. Master, I will go alter Nurse Joy's memories and ensure that the security footage is deleted. You better call your mother. Leaving the Riolu to settle his business, Ash headed for one of the video phone booths that stood at the other end of the lobby. Aura had no damaging effects on machines, so the video phones worked even though time was still frozen. Ash dialed in his home number, and put on the headset. After a few moments of dial tone, his mother's face appeared on the screen, clad in a dressing gown with her hair bunched up in a towel. Ash! Oh, it's so good to hear from you. Did you make it to Viridian in one piece? I did, though there was a slight hiccup when I helped to treat a girl's Pokémon after she was attacked by a rogue Gyarados. I told Professor Oak about it, and he's already dealing with it with Officer Jenny. However, Mum, something else did happen before I reached the Pokémon Center. Delia raised an eyebrow. What happened? Luca and I encountered two people and their Meowth in need of help. They were forced to join a criminal organization against their will and only just managed to escape. They have nowhere to go, no family or friends who could take them in. They fear that their former bosses will come after them for defecting. Delia nodded, expression no less serious, but with a glimmer of sympathy in her eyes. Poor things, did you offer them any help? Do you mind letting them stay in our house? They can take my room and the spare one. Also, I figured that you would appreciate the company. A smile crept over Delia's lips. You are incredibly thoughtful, Ash. I am more than happy to let them stay. I presume they are on their way to Pallet Town as we speak. Yes. Their names are Jesse and James. I'll be sure to look out for them. Now, it's late, have you eaten yet? Not yet. I intend to do so before I go to sleep. I won't keep you from your stomach then, Delia chuckled. Take care, Ash. Love you. Love you too, Mum. The call ended, and the screen returned to the default home setting. Luca came over, everything settled. Nurse Joy now believes that it was a hooligan that threw the smoke grenade into the lobby. She is now calling Officer Jenny to report the incident. Good job, Luca. Everything's cool with my mum too. Now, let's grab some dinner. I'm sure you must be hungry from using that much of your aura. You need not second-guess that assumption. To be continued. Thanks for everything, Nurse Joy. I'm sorry that the center was the target of a hooligan. It's no trouble, Mr. Ketchum. Nurse Joy waved her hand. It's not like someone was trying to steal the Pokémon recuperating here. What damage there is can be easily fixed. Glad to hear that. Once again, thank you. I'll be off now. Take care. Departing from the Pokémon Center, Ash made a pit stop at the nearby Pokemart to stock up on supplies. He had already bought his bus ticket for the journey to Vermilion City, but in order to save money, it was a regular service that didn't provide meals on board. Given that the journey was estimated to take a full day, he needed to buy food for himself and his team so that they didn't go hungry. It was MREs for him, and some canned food pellets for Luca and Kai. There was no available refrigeration on the bus, so no perishable bentos or foodstuffs. Ash immediately headed for the bus terminal. Even though it was a weekday, the terminal was jam-packed with commuters either taking local routes, or like him, traveling out of Viridian to destinations around the region. Since the complex was massive, it took a while for Ash to find the right bus bay, and there was already a sizable queue by the time he managed to find it. 5 minutes later, the bus arrived. Ash had his ticket scanned before boarding. He claimed a seat in the middle of the bus, stowed his bag in the overhead rack, and made himself comfortable. Luca hopped down from his shoulder and settled in on the adjacent seat. The doors closed with a loud hiss. The driver got into his seat and pulled the bus out of the bay. It joined the queue of buses leaving the terminal at this particular timing, before heading out into the city on the full-day journey to Vermilion. There was no form of entertainment on the bus, so Ash amused himself by watching the scenery pass by as the bus left Viridian City behind. Towering buildings gave way to low-rise suburbs, before urban shifted into untouched nature. Rolling hills, forests and rivers were all that was there to see for several hours. Once that became somewhat of a bore, Ash chatted with Luca about anything that came to mind, even boring topics that would have made most people lose interest after a few minutes. There was nothing else to do, unless he wanted to sit in silence as the bus rumbled on down the road. The rest stops were a welcome reprieve. While the other passengers stretched their joints or went to use the washrooms, Ash took the opportunity to feed his team and himself. It was around lunchtime anyways, and there was still a fair distance to go. Admittedly, the MREs were nothing interesting, at least in comparison to the Pokémon Center cafeteria food and especially his mother's cooking. Understandably, these were made purely to sustain someone over a PRD of time. Taste was only secondary, especially since these didn't require refrigeration. That being said, Ash increasingly looked forward to the Pokémon Center food once he reached Vermilion. As the bus left Viridian City at 10 in the morning, it was scheduled to arrive in Vermilion at about 11 hours later. Ash did some research during the journey. The Vermilion City buses operated until midnight, which suited him just fine. Taxi fares were more expensive, and he wanted to save his money without resorting to unnecessary purchases. Along the way, Ash nodded off into a nap. When he next opened his eyes, the blue sky had turned red and orange, and the scenic greenery had turned into suburban sprawl. A quick glance at the time showed that it was just past 7 in the evening. Only 2 more hours to go before the bus arrived at the Vermilion terminal. Despite getting caught up in the evening rush hour traffic, the bus drove into the terminal on schedule. Ash disembarked and boarded a local bus that would take him to the Pokémon Center. Upon arrival, he checked in with no problems, and headed up to his room. After a quick shower, both Ash and his team hit the hay and were out for the rest of the night. Come morning, everyone ate a hearty breakfast to give them the energy to sustain themselves for most of the day. With the plan to travel to Fuchsia City and then the Safari Zone, lunch may not be possible given how Ash didn't know how long he will end up spending in his search for a Dragon. Ash checked out at 9:45 in order to catch the ferry that was to depart an hour later. Thankfully, there was a shuttle service that connected the Pokémon Center with the ferry terminal located at the city's port. Ferries were only one of the different forms of maritime commerce taking place at Vermilion Port. Since its inception and growth over the years, the port has become a trading and commercial hub between Kanto and the rest of the world. Container ships from different regions made their port of call in Vermilion, as did the numerous cruise liners that brought tourists to and from Kanto. On average, 20 container ships and 12 cruise liners will dock at Vermilion Port per day, raking in billions of dollars in revenue from goods and services. Fuchsia City was right across the Kanto Bay from Vermilion, and is the most traveled ferry line available, but other ferry services also operated lines between the Orange Archipelago and the Sevii Islands at reasonable prices for budget travelers who didn't want splurge on cruise liners. Ash arrived at the ferry terminal with half an hour to spare. He cleared security and boarded the ferry, an aged but hardy vessel with plenty of seafaring years left in her hull. The ferry was split into 2 decks, with the top occupied by the bridge where the captain manned the controls, and the bottom further split into the seating room, bathrooms, and open-air refreshment bar. Ash bagged a seat and stowed his bag up in the overhead racks. He opened the window to let some fresh air in, the slight saltiness wafting through. At precisely 11:15 in the morning, the ferry pulled away from the terminal and sailed out into the bay. With the considerable speed it was going, a strong breeze blew through the open window, providing plenty of ventilation and cooling from the otherwise hot weather outside. Leaning back into his seat, Ash descended into quiet contemplation. He really hoped that he will be able to catch a Dratini and fortify his team with one of the rarest Pokémon in the entire region. But he mustn't forget that Dratini was, indeed, incredibly rare, and there was no guarantee that he will even catch one today, if ever. On top of that, with only Luca and Kai on his team, Ash knew that he couldn't be too ambitious with trainer battles. Both might be strong on their own rights, but he'd be hard-pressed to triumph over, say, the Kanto gym leaders with the current size of his team. That means that his source of income will be rather tight, and only Arceus knows how long he will have to take in order to afford plane tickets abroad. Master? Is everything all right? Just thinking about the future, Luca. I feel that the road ahead will be a long one. The Riolu placed a paw on his hand. Overthinking never solves anything. We need to take things one day at a time. It will be more manageable that way. I know. The ferry docked in Fuchsia Harbor without incident. Ash disembarked and boarded the free shuttle bus to the Pokémon Center. He checked in and left his bag in his room. Handing the key to Nurse Joy for safekeeping, he bought a 2-way ticket to the Safari Zone and hopped onto another shuttle bus that took him and 2 young families out of town towards their destination. The bus pulled up at a drop-off point right in front of a building that appears to have taken inspiration from Alolan architecture. Next to the building was a large wooden gate with a sign on top that read, Kanto Regional Safari Zone. The 2 families got off first, followed by Ash and Luca. One of the families hung around outside the building for a reason Ash couldn't be bothered to know, while the second went in first. Ash followed them into an air-conditioned lobby where an elderly man dressed in stereotypical safari clothes manned the front desk, presumably the warden. The family of 3 were talking to the man, who after receiving their supplies, headed through a set of glass doors that presumably led out into the zone itself. Good afternoon, young man. Are you here to take on the Safari Challenge too? Ash nodded. Excellent. Now let me guide you through the rules here in the Safari Challenge. Every 100 Poke Dollars give you 3 hours here in the zone. You are not allowed to battle any Pokemon unless they challenge you to a battle. Any Pokemon that you manage to capture will be sent straight here to the front lobby for collection once your session is over, which you will be notified via a message sent to your phone or device, if you so wish. Now, do you have any other questions? Ash signed, and Rotom emerged to translate. Do you provide supplies such as bicycles or fishing rods? Momentarily surprised, the warden quickly composed himself. Yes we do, young man. A fishing rod and a can of bait cost 20 Poke Dollars, and a bicycle is 50 per session. Will you like to include those with your purchase? Ash nodded. Alright, that comes up to 170 Poke Dollars, please. Rotom sent the money over via digital transfer. The warden went into a back storeroom and emerged with a bicycle and a self-assembly fishing rod and can of bait in the basket. He then produced a tray containing 30 safari ball. Here you go, young man. Just head out through those doors on the left, and your session will begin. All the best out there. Ash took the bicycle and the ball with a thankful nod, wheeling it out of the building into the grounds. Meanwhile, back in Pallet Town, Delia sat down on the sofa, nursing a tall glass of iced tea. She was on one of her off weeks, mandated by Professor Oak to ensure that all of his assistants had a stable work-life balance. Delia had watched some television earlier, until the reruns began playing and she became bored. She glanced at the clock on the wall. It was almost lunchtime. Perhaps she should start getting the food ready? Oh yeah, weren't there supposed to be 2 people and their Meowth showing up at her doorstep soon? She should get ready for their arrival? The doorbell rang. Delia sat her glass down on the coffee table and hurried to the door. She opened it, and came face to face with 2 nervous-looking young adults and their Meowth. Are you Jessie and James? That's us, ma'am, James nodded. Your son said that you're willing to let us stay? Come in, come in. Delia quickly ushered them inside. You must be tired and hot, traveling so far by foot. Would any of you like some iced tea? Understandably, fishing for a Dragon required an ungodly amount of patience and willpower. It was a good thing that Ash was well versed in patience, courtesy of the years spent training his aura. Most people would have thrown in the towel and stomped off long after the 25th Magikarp was reeled in. The Safari Zone was split into 3 areas, all of which had bodies of water of varying shapes and sizes. These were Ash's best bet on reeling in a Dragon. But as luck would have it, he had no success thus far. He had already gone through areas 1 and 2, and all he had fished up were 30 Magikarp, 23 Goldeen, 19 Sea King, and 7 Psyduck. While several of them provided quite a workout for Luca and Kai, Ash was still nowhere near his goal. With only an hour left in his time slot, Ash packed up his fishing rod and bait, and cycled into Area 3, his last chance to catch a Dragon before he had to return to the main building empty-handed. Do not be disappointed, Master, Luca tried to be encouraging, there will be other chances. Also, life is not a race, there is no gold medal at the end. Ash nodded, but didn't reply. Cycling past an abandoned, derelict house that was on its last legs, Ash parked his bicycle near the lake, lined his fishing rod, cast the line and waited. He ended up reeling in another 5 Magikarp and 3 Sea King, all of which broke off the hook and dove back into water before he could properly release them. Ash quickly discovered another problem: his bait container was running out. He still had 45 minutes left, but if he had no more bait, his time in the Safari Zone would come to a premature end. Setting down his fishing rod, he pulled his legs into his chest, resting his forehead against his knees. He could feel his aura crackling under his skin, agitated from his growing frustration over the past 2 hours. He needed to calm down and recenter himself, otherwise his aura will explode and lay waste to the entire zone. Releasing a shuddering breath, Ash picked up his fishing rod and lined the hook with bait. He cast the line once more and waited. The sinker sank into the water, and the line began to run. Immediately, Ash began drawing it in. Strangely, whatever was on the hook was far heavier than all of his previous catches. It was also insanely strong, bending his fishing rod so much that it was a miracle that it didn't simply just snap into 2. Ash had to put a great deal of his strength into keeping the rod in his hands and reeling whatever it was to the surface. After several minutes of struggling and exertion, the catch broke the surface with a tremendous splash. Ash and Luca barely had time to scramble away before it hit the ground on the exact spot where the preteen had been sitting on just moments prior. It was serpent-like, with pink scales and a white underbelly. Ash's eyes were as wide as dinner plates, his brain trying to reboot in order to process the creature before him and Luca. It looked like a shiny Dragon, but it was far longer and thicker than a normal specimen would be, running at 2.5 meters in length and about twice as wide. Also, the white fins on both sides of its head resembled more like wings than aquatic fins. In fact, if Ash had to be honest, he'd think this Dragon was stuck halfway in its evolution into a Dragonair. Could it really be still called a Dragon, then? The serpent-like Pokémon growled, its eyes hard and flinty. It certainly didn't act like most Dragon, who are timid creatures and would often flee on sight. Ash and Luca remained still, making sure not to move. The last thing they wanted was to provoke Dragon and set it off. It wouldn't be far off to assume that it knew some powerful Dragon-type attacks that would cause extensive damage to themselves and the surrounding environment if unleashed. Rotom zipped out of Ash's pocket and scanned. Dragon, the young dragon Pokémon. This specimen is female, and is a shiny. She has the shed skin ability, and the locked hidden ability of Marvel Scale. The second seemed to drag on with tense uneasiness. Dragon's eyes sized Ash up, and she growled again. Master, she is challenging us to a battle. What is your plan? Get ready, Luca. Ash unhooked Kai's Pokeball, we're taking her on. The Seadra was released, and got into battle stance once brought up to speed from Luca. Dratini wasted no time, and with a loud roar, surged towards them with Dragon Rush. Ash and his team barely managed to dodge the incoming projectile, the air charged with draconic energy as the attack fizzled out with Dratini screeching to a halt. Luca, tell Kai to use his ink jet move. The Riolu relayed the message, and Kai spat out a blob of black ink at Dratini. The black, viscous liquid splashed over the dragon-type's eyes, temporarily blinding her. Luca, now use Aura Sphere. Orbs of crackling aura were quickly formed and released one after the other at Dratini. All managed to hit their target, prompting Dratini to use Aqua Tail on all three of them. Kai repelled the onslaught of water with his own deluge, while Ash and Luca protected each other with shields made from their aura. Some of the water washed away the ink from Dratini's eyes, allowing her to see once more. Luca, Force Palm. Try to paralyze her. The Riolu shot forward, dodging several twister attacks with trained finesse. He got within reach of Dratini, but was unable to execute the attack when the serpent Pokémon headbutt him and sent him flying back towards Ash. Luca, are you alright? I'm fine, I just did not expect that. Meanwhile, Dratini was preparing a dragon tail attack. She surged towards the trio at breakneck speed, about to slam her tail into them when Kai intercepted her path. Despite taking some damage, the draconic seahorse was able to tank the attack, before using Hydro Pump to blast Dratini back. Ash realized that he couldn't let the battle drag on for too long without the possibility of Dratini fleeing or any one of them getting seriously injured coming to fruition. Luca, remember how we have been working on attack combinations? Yes, Master. Which combination? Aura Whirlpool. Luca relayed the message to Kai, and together, Aura Sphere combined with Whirlpool. A spinning cylinder of water shot towards Dratini, with a beam of aura swirling around it as a booster. It was at the same moment that Dratini released a hyper beam attack at them. Both collided head-on, and for several moments, a stalemate ensued with neither attack gaining ground over the other. Then, Ash pumped in his own aura into the whirlpool alongside Luca, and the combined attack broke through the impasse and hit Dratini head-on. The impact threw the serpent Pokémon several meters, during which Ash produced one of the Safari Ball and threw it at Dratini. It bounced on her head, and opened, stinging her inside. As water splashed across the ground, the Safari Ball twitched twice, and then clicked firmly shut. The tension literally washed out of Ash's body at the successful capture. If he could speak, he would have screamed and hollered. He settled for falling to his knees and faceplanting into the wet ground. Kai and Luca rushed to their trainer in celebration. You did it, Master. I literally can't tell you how happy I am. Meanwhile, the Safari Ball containing Dratini hopped up into the air and vanished, teleporting to the main lobby for processing and collection. You both did well, incredibly well. We're going to celebrate tonight. How about a nice restaurant? Ash turned a questioning look to Kai, who nodded. A restaurant it is, then. Ah. Welcome back, young man, the warden greeted as Ash re-entered the lobby. Did you have fun? Ash signed, and Rotom translated, User Ash has gotten what he has come here for. The experience was eye-opening, but incredibly satisfactory. Excellent. I'm happy that you were successful, the elderly man smiled. Now, here is your Pokémon, all healed up. He handed over Dratini's Safari Ball. You can just leave the bicycle and fishing rod over there, I'll handle the rest. Have a good day. Ash took his newest teammate, and nodded his thanks. He left the main lobby and headed for the shuttle bus bay. Checking the time and the shuttle schedule, he had about 10 minutes before the next bus arrived. He could use this waiting PRD to get to know Dratini. Unhooking the Safari Ball from his belt, he opened it and let his newest teammate out. Dratini landed on the pavement with a loud thud. She looked around in confusion for a moment, before realization had dawned upon her. Good afternoon, Dratini. My name is Luca, and this is my master, Ash Ketchum. He caught you, so you are part of the team now. My master is training to be an Aura Guardian, someone who takes care of people and Pokémon, as well as aspiring to become a Dragon-type master. He is incredibly capable, and I am confident that he will help you become the strongest Dragonite that has ever existed. How about it? Will you work with us? In truth, Dratini was a little disappointed that her life of freedom had come to an end, but on the other hand, the Safari Zone was only so big, and the world outside was far bigger than she could ever have imagined if she stayed put. Plus, this boy standing before her, and the team he used against her, were a testament of incredible strength and power cultivated over years. She appreciated strong characters, and she knew that together, the team will be a force to be reckoned with. Dratini nodded with firm absolution. Ash signed, Welcome to the team. To be continued. After a hearty, late lunch at a Collision-style restaurant in downtown Fuchsia, Dragon was given a name, as was tradition with Ash and his team. Admittedly, it involved a bit of a back and forth since Dragon was quite fussy about choosing the perfect name for herself. Ash started with some draconic-sounding names, but all were rejected. Powerful, royal names were given more consideration, and a few were eventually shortlisted. Finally, after more back and forth, the name Adela was decided upon. With that settled, Ash turned his attention on his next course of plan. There wasn't much to do in Fuchsia City, other than the poison-type gym run by leader Koga and his daughter Janine. The obvious thing to do was to travel around the region, battling other trainers to give his team a good workout and to earn income. Ash figured that he should stay the night before returning to Vermilion the next day. With his team in tow, he headed back to the Pokémon Center. After sending them off to be healed, Ash lingered around the lobby and waited for them to return. As he entertained himself with a magazine, Rotom zipped out of his pocket. Ring. Ring. You have an incoming video call from Professor Oak. Ash accepted the call, and Oak appeared on the screen. Ash, my boy. It's been a while since we've talked. How is Fuchsia City? It's been an eventful experience. I managed to catch a Dratini. Oh wow. Excellent work, Ash. You must be pleased that you're one step closer to your goal. Incredibly so, Professor. I'm happy for you. Oak flashed a thumbs up. Anyways, Ash, how long are you intending to stay in Fuchsia for? I'm leaving tomorrow. I think I'll wander around the region battling other trainers and earning some income. I see. Actually, I have a request from an old friend that needs urgent help. Who is this friend? His name is Bill Montgomery. We used to work together as partners until he decided to branch off and pursue his own brand of research, Oak explained. He called me a short while ago, because apparently he's stuck in some kind of costume and needs help getting out of it. I see. And I presume you want me to go over and help Mr. Montgomery out of his predicament? I would be most appreciative, Oak nodded. I'm a bit bogged down with my own work, otherwise I would have gone over and helped him myself. Okay, where is he currently at? He's in his lighthouse at the end of route. I know that it's incredibly far, so I'll send my Kadabra over to teleport you to Cerulean City. Got it. When will you send him over? Tomorrow, probably around 9:30. It's quite late now, and I don't want you traveling while it's dark out. All right, I'll be ready then. Both bade each other farewell, and the call ended. Ash Ketchum, your Pokémon are ready for collection. After breakfast the next morning, Ash packed up his things and headed down to the lobby to meet Professor Oak's Kadabra. At exactly 9:30, Kadabra teleported into the lobby, appearing before Ash and Luca. Ready to go? Yes, Kadabra. Take us to Cerulean City. Kadabra offered his hand, which Ash took. With a final wave to Nurse Joy, he was teleported out of the Pokémon Center. The entire journey lasted a second, but it was one that Ash hoped he never had to repeat again unless necessary. It felt like he was being squeezed through the eye of a needle before being unceremoniously spat out. Most definitely not for those who have uneasy stomachs. Take care. There are challenges ahead. Thanks, Kadabra. The psychic type bowed once more, before teleporting back to Professor Oak's corral. Ash turned to Luca. Let's stop by the Pokemart first. I'm not sure how long we'll be on the road for. A wise decision, Master. After stocking up on supplies, Ash departed from Cerulean towards Route this one, together with Route 25, encompassed the northeastern edge of Kanto, which was also the least developed part of the region. Unlike the smooth coastline of southern Kanto, the northeast coast was incredibly rocky and prone to violent storms that kicked up huge waves and strong winds. Many ships in past eras met untimely ends along this part of the coast, prompting the building of a lighthouse in order to save lives from the unforgiving waters of the East Kanto Sea. The rocky coastline also meant that any economic activity was unfeasible, centering the majority of the wealth around the Vermilion area once the port opened up. With no money for maintenance, the lighthouse fell into disrepair, only recently rejuvenated by Bill Montgomery as his research headquarters and living space. For Ash and Luca, the journey through Route 24 was relatively smooth going. There were plenty of trainers camping along the route, ready to battle any unsuspecting travelers who happened to stumble into them. None of them stood any chance when faced off against Ash's team, and his bank account had a healthy top-up by the time all was said and done. Since Route 24 was rather long, the team had no choice but to spend the night camping before continuing their trek the next day. It was roughing it, but at least Gardenia Town was not too far away, according to Rotom's GPS. Once morning came, they were back on their feet and heading off to civilization. However, just before reaching the outskirts of Gardenia Town, Luca sensed something further down the dirt road they were traveling on. Master, I can feel the life force of a Pokémon nearby. A wild one. No, not wild. It's reptilian in nature, with a flame burning at the tip of its tail. Immediately, Ash realized what kind of Pokémon it was. Pushing the budding questions to one side temporarily, he and Luca hurried down the road in search of the creature. After a minute or so, they skidded to a stop. It was a Charmander, perched idly on a tree stump. That in of itself was incredibly strange. As far as recent memory goes, Kanto didn't have a wild Charmander population, hunted into near extinction several centuries ago. It was only through the tireless efforts of breeders and a law passed by the Kanto champion of that time, about 100 years prior to the present day, that not only allowed Charmanders to be designated a regional starter and a protected species, but also ensured their continued survival. To see this specimen sitting idly in the open with no trainer in sight was extremely baffling. Ash and Luca approached the Charmander slowly so as to not spook it. To its credit, the fire reptilian Pokémon didn't show any fear when it noticed them. In fact, it was almost as if it was nonchalant. "Luca, can you ask why is it sitting on this tree stump?" The Riolu nodded, and approached the stump. He communicated in his own language, and the Charmander responded immediately. "He's waiting for his trainer," Luca replied. "Damien is the name of the trainer. Damien told him to wait for him to return and not move." Ash looked up. Right now, the sky was clear, but he could see towering cumulus clouds beginning to form. Based on his knowledge of the weather, this was a sure sign that it was going to rain in the next couple of hours. Evidently, Luca had the same thought process. "Charmander, it's going to rain soon. You do know that it is life-threatening for your species to be out in the rain, right?" Charmander shook his head resolutely, and replied in his language. Luca turned to Ash. "He doesn't care. Even if it rains, he will remain here, because Damien told him to. Tell him that Damien is not a good trainer, then. A trainer who cares about their Pokémon will not deliberately endanger their team." Luca conveyed Ash's response. The first vestiges of doubt began to take root in Charmander's eyes. "Luca, I think it's possible that this Damien has abandoned Charmander, released him and all that. Tell him this, and let him know that I want to test something with him. It will prove conclusively if he is still Damien's Pokémon, or if he has truly been released." Luca nodded, and relayed the message. While Charmander looked as if he wanted to protest that his Damien would never abandon or release him, Luca cut him off, and proposed Ash's test. Charmander was silent for a moment, before tentatively nodding. "He's willing to oblige." Ash nodded. Setting his bag down, he unzipped it and fished out an empty Pokeball. He turned to Charmander and tossed the ball at him. It bounced off Charmander's head, and opened. Ash's lips dipped into a frown as Charmander disappeared into the Pokeball, and it closed, falling onto the tree stump. It shook 3 times, before locking, signaling a successful capture. Luca turned to Ash. "He's going to be devastated." Charmander was, indeed, devastated. It was made worse by the fact that when Ash and Luca arrived in Gardenia Town and entered the Pokémon Center, the first thing they noticed is a group of trainers surrounding a young man with sunglasses perched on his hair, who was bragging to them about abandoning his useless Charmander on a tree stump where a rainstorm will just do away with him for good. It was only thanks to his years of training and his values that Ash didn't go over and obliterate Damien for such cruelty. He could literally feel Charmander crying and wailing from inside the Pokeball, having clearly heard his former trainers bragging. Forcing himself to head towards the front desk, he tapped the bell, and the local nurse Joy appeared. "How may I help you?" Ash signed stiffly. "1 room for the night, please." Once all logistics were done and key handed over, Ash robotically went to his rented room and locked the door behind him. Setting his bag down, Ash took the Pokeball containing Charmander and opened it. The poor thing was in the midst of heart-wrenching bawling. Ash knelt down and pulled Charmander into a tight hug, not letting go. Ash gently cradled Charmander, like a parent with their child, until the Pokémon has calmed down sufficiently. Ash turned to Luca. "I want to speak to Charmander, can you help translate?" "Yes, Master." Ash set Charmander down, and signed, with Luca conveying the message. "Charmander, I'm really sorry that you had to experience being abandoned. Words cannot describe the pain you must be going through. I want you to know that you are not alone. If you will let me, I want to keep you on my team. We will train together, become the very best, and be revered by friend and foe alike. What do you say?" The part of being the best and revered by others didn't matter much to Charmander. He just didn't want to be alone anymore. The pain of being abandoned was unimaginable, and he didn't want a repeat of such agony. "Char. He accepts, Master." Ash nodded, and signed. "I won't let you down." To be continued. With a thunderstorm roaring outside, Ash introduced Charmander to the rest of his team. Admittedly, he was rather intimidated by Adela and Kai's bigger sizes and fierce looks, but both the Dratini and Seadra, upon learning about what happened to Charmander, took the fire-type under their wings, so to speak. Adela, in particular, let Charmander sleep with her when the crashes of thunder became too much for him to endure. Come morning, Kai and Luca made sure that Charmander ate his breakfast until he was sufficiently satisfied. They had a long journey ahead. Gardenia Town was the last pocket of human civilization along the rest of Routes 24, and if it came to it, the team would have to camp outdoors until they reached Bill's lighthouse. After checking out of the Pokemon Center, Ash and his team departed Gardenia Town and made quick work trekking the rest of the journey. Along the way, they would stop for meals and to get some training in. As Charmander was still young and inexperienced, Ash didn't go too hard on his newest teammate. Still, it was evident that the fire-type was desperate to prove to his trainer that he was a valuable member of the team, even challenging Luca to a battle. Ash intervened before things could spiral out of control. He instructed his team to continue training by themselves, and led Charmander to one side so that he could communicate privately with Luca's help. Charmander, there's no need to push yourself so hard yet. I know that you want to become stronger, but not at the expense of your physical well-being and safety. You need to progress at the pace that you are comfortable at. Otherwise, you'll only hurt yourself. Char. Luca turned to Ash. Master, he's saying that he doesn't want to be useless. He doesn't want you to abandon him. Ash's heart cracked. He went over and pulled Charmander into a tight hug. Staying like that for a full minute, he then set the fire-type down and signed again. Charmander, I'm not like Damien. I will never tell you, or anyone on my team, that they are useless. I promised you that we will train together to become the very best, right? I never go back on my promises. I will see to it that you will become a fearsome Charizard, even if it's the last thing I do. Okay, Charmander, the fire-type sniffled, before nodding. Ash pulled him into another hug, and carried him back to where Adela and Kai were duking it out in a mock battle with Rotom spectating and providing feedback. Rotom, how much further are we from the lighthouse? Based on our current GPS position, we're about another 10 minutes trek before we arrive. Night had fallen, with only the last vestiges of sunlight remaining as a faint layer of orange against the darkening sky. As Ash and his team reached the tail end of Route 25, the landscape had shifted drastically. While previously, they had gone through rolling fields and gentle hills, the terrain had become rocky and steep in certain places. While this was not a problem for Ash, he didn't want to spend too much time hiking across uneven landscapes on an empty stomach. He hadn't had the chance to have his evening meal yet, and gastric rumblings were not the most pleasant sensations to feel. He better pick up the pace then. Thankfully, with his increased speed, he arrived at the lighthouse 4 minutes earlier than anticipated. It was perched on the edge of a cliff, the rotating lights puncturing the darkness at regular intervals. Along the edge, a stone wall acted as reinforcement against the wind and waves, while on the other side of the structure was a 2-story house, presumably where Bill lived. As Ash approached, the beam of light momentarily lit up the stone wall, revealing that each alternate brick was engraved with an image of a Pokémon, specifically Final Evolution Form Pokémon. Interesting, are these the subjects of Bill's research? Ash wondered to himself. Suddenly, he felt water droplets fall upon his skin. He looked up, the sky had unexpectedly gone overcast. Pushing all other thoughts to the back burner, he rushed to the entrance of the house, barely making it into the sheltered porch before the drizzle became a deluge. Ash and Luca wiped themselves down. Where did the rain come from? It is highly unusual, Luca agreed. As the rain grew heavier and the wind beginning to blow some of the water into the porch, Ash searched for a doorbell to let Bill know that they were here. Let it be known that the design of the house was rather rustic, so the presence of a high-tech looking doorbell with a camera, positioned next to the front door was rather unusual at first. Though Ash quickly reasoned that investing in technology would be something that Bill did as a researcher. Stepping closer, he pressed the button, and the air was rocked by a loud, reverberating crash of a gong, so much so that the porch actually vibrated from the noise. A robotic voice followed after, "Identify yourselves, visitors." Rotom shot out of Ash's pocket. "My name is Rotom. And I am the assistant voice of Ash Ketchum here, who is mute and therefore unable to identify himself verbally. We are here to help Bill Montgomery out of his predicament after being informed by the esteemed Professor Samuel Oak." A second of silence followed. The robotic voice started again, "Stay where you are, Ash Ketchum." Out from the camera, a holographic grid beamed out and scanned Ash's body from top to bottom. The grid vanished, and the voice came a third time, "Identity confirmed. Please come in." The door unlocked by itself, and opened. Ash and Luca stepped inside, and the door closed behind them. At first, all that Ash could see was total darkness. He was tempted to manifest his aura to provide some illumination, when suddenly, the lights turn on one after the other. A living room that matched the rustic exterior came into view, dotted with all manner of machines that would not look out of place in Professor Oak's laboratory. However, what caught Ash's notice was the large Pokémon being that resembled a horseshoe crab at the other end of the room. It turned around, and it appeared to perk up at the sight of Ash. "Ah, Ash, you're here. Can you come over and help me out of this costume? It's been a couple of days already." This must be Bill, Ash thought as he hurried over. He inspected the costume for a means to open it. There's a button under the front pair of legs. I can't reach it, because I realized too late that a Kabuto's legs are too short. Ash found the button after a second, and pushed it. With a loud hiss, the costume came apart in different pieces. A man in his early 30s emerged, taking a huge, relief breath of fresh air. "Thank you so much, Ash." Bill beamed. "I thought I was going to get stuck in that costume forever." Ash had a question. "Mr. Montgomery, why were you in that costume to begin with?" "An experiment." Bill explained. "Kabuto are long thought to be extinct, but there is so much we can still learn about species that have lived long before us. Like all Pokemon, Kabuto have hearts and minds. I was hoping that by putting myself into a Kabuto costume, I might be able to grasp what they would have thought and felt while still alive." Bill then sighed. "Unfortunately, I didn't get to do much since I quickly realized I had no way out of the costume. It has been a very trying few days, and I am positively starving. And judging from how stomach just roared, Ash, I presume you're in a similar state." There was no denying it. Ash's hunger pangs have intensified. "I'll whip something up in a jiffy. Care to stay for dinner?" "Thank you for your hospitality, Bill. Tell me, Ash, how has being a trainer treated you thus far?" Ash put down his spoon, and signed. "So far, so good. I have been battling other trainers and earning income that way. I don't intend to take on the gym challenges just yet or aim for the leagues. I want to build up my team before engaging in any serious battles." "Interesting," Bill nodded. "As far as I know, once they become certified trainers, many just sign up for the Indigo Conference or go around throwing Pokeballs at anything that moves." "Don't I know that?" Ash thought to himself, remembering the times he overheard Gary bragging about how he was going to catch all the Pokemon in the Kanto region as a child. Pushing that thought away, he signed. "I know that you are a researcher, Mr. Montgomery, but what kind of research do you delve in?" "I'm glad you asked, Ash." Bill replied enthusiastically, swallowing his bite of food. "There are a few branches that I specialize in. As I stated earlier, I hope to understand how a Pokemon feels and think through in-depth observation. The Kabuto costume is one such example, though obviously not the best due to oversights on my part." Bill chuckled at that. "Second, shiny Pokemon has always fascinated me. There is so much about shiny Pokemon that we still don't know. Like, what makes a Pokemon a shiny? Is it their genetic composition or makeup? Does the environment increase the likelihood of a shiny Pokemon being birthed? Or is it some other, undiscovered reason? I would love to study a specimen up close, but alas, my calculations show that we would perhaps only have one shiny Pokemon out of a total population of 10,000. Ash remained silent, wondering how Bill would react to Adela. "But anyways, I've rambled too long." Bill finished the rest of his food. "What sort of Pokemon have you caught thus far, Ash?" "I'm hoping to be a Dragon-type master one day, so my captures are all Dragon-types, except for my starter." "Your starter?" Ash turned to one side. "Luca, come on over." The Riolu looked up from his food bowl, went over to the table and hopped up on top. "Luca is my starter. We met when I was 4. "A Riolu?" Bill was surprised. "Did you travel to Sinnoh and met him there?" "Rather, the opposite. Luca sensed my birth and spent years traveling from Sinnoh all the way to Kanto," Ash explained. "See, I was born with higher than normal levels of a spiritual energy called aura. Every living being has aura, but most only have a minuscule amount within them. I have the rare ability to manifest my aura and manipulate it to my will. So besides training to be a Dragon-type master, I am also training to be an aura guardian too." "Fascinating," Bill was awed. "I've honestly don't know much about aura guardians, other than the last one died a very long time ago. Will you let me see your aura?" Ash nodded, putting his hands out and channeling his aura onto his palm. Bill made an amazed noise when a small orb of blue energy manifested. "Incredible, simply incredible," Bill whispered. "I have never seen such a beautiful sight in my entire life." Ash extinguished the orb. "Thank you. You are truly a remarkable trainer, Ash," said Bill. "I've also hardly ever heard of someone training to be a Dragon-type specialist. If you don't mind, can I see your team?" Ash nodded, moving around the table to an empty space large enough to show off his team. First, he let Charmander out. A Charmander, Bill noted with interest. I thought Luca is your starter. Ash's brows furrowed, and he signed stiffly. Charmander was abandoned. I found him near Gardenia Town in Open, just before a thunderstorm struck. Ah, I see, Bill nodded solemnly. My apologies. I had the great misfortune of chancing upon his former trainer, who was literally bragging about leaving Charmander to die. Bill sighed. There will always be cruel people in the world. I trust that you will raise Charmander well? I made that promise, and I always keep them, Ash signed, before releasing his second Pokémon. A Seadra, Bill noted, another classic example. Kai is special, Ash signed, just like me, he is mute. He can also understand sign language. Both of Bill's eyebrows rose. Really? Did you teach him? No, actually, and that is the amazing part. I didn't teach him to understand. He knows sign language right from the get-go. Bill was speechless for a moment. Seriously? This is unprecedented. Professor Oak is currently involved in research to see if this understanding of human sign language is only applicable to Kai, or if it is an innate ability of Pokémon in general. Still, the possibility of an additional means of communication is extremely exciting. Bill replied, this opens up so many avenues for individuals such as yourself who are unable to speak or are deaf. True, Ash nodded. Perhaps you should get in contact with Professor Oak if you wish to collaborate with him. He took out Adela's Pokeball. This is my final Pokémon. He released her, and the floor shook as the larger-than-normal Dratini materialized. Bill's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates, and his mouth fell open. Adela looked around curiously, before she noticed the strange man staring at her. The silence prolonged for several moments. Bill? Bill? Are you okay? Much to Ash and his team's bemusement, Bill keeled backwards and crashed onto the floor in a dead faint. Ash, I cannot stress this enough. You are the greatest friend I have ever had the honor of meeting, and I am forever indebted to you. Ash's bemusement continued even after Bill was revived via a water gun to the face by Kai. The researcher had literally gone onto his knees before Ash and begged him to let him conduct some tests with Adela. After giving both his and the Dratini's consent, Bill essentially pounced onto Adela like a parched man chancing upon an oasis. With a hungry, bordering on manic look in his eyes, Bill began taking swabs from Adela's scales and mouth, muttering to himself inaudibly. Ash lost count of how many pictures Bill took with a camera he pulled from somewhere, covering every possible angle and close-up. It's really a pity, said Bill, that your Dratini isn't due to shed her skin just yet. An old, shed skin contains important information about the specimen, preserved in the fiber. Just think, with as remarkable a specimen as Adela is, who knows how much we can learn from such a valuable source of data. Ash signed, I'm more than willing to mail you her old skin come the time that she sheds it. Bill's eyes bugged out. Seriously? You're willing to do that for me? Ash nodded, and was almost knocked backwards when Bill tackled him into an overenthusiastic hug, bubbling his thanks over and over again as tears trickled down from his eyes. Unused to such blatant and over-the-top displays of physical contact, Ash awkwardly patted the man's back. Ash, thank you. Thank you so much. You have done so much for me this evening. I simply have to pay you back somehow. It can be anything, money, favors, you name it. Just tell me and it will be done. In truth, Ash didn't really want anything in return. But seeing the manically determined look in Bill's eyes, the preteen knew that the man wouldn't take a no for an answer. So he thought about it, for a few good seconds. He signed, Bill, I'm not sure if this is possible, but I would like to have my team roster increased. Oh? Bill was intrigued. Tell me why. As per league regulations, I can only carry 6 Pokémon on my team at any one time. Any more than that, and they will be sent to Professor Oak's corral. I will only get to see them again if I switch out a member of my current team at Pokémon centers. This isn't fair for them or myself. I want to foster strong relationships with my team, and not use them like mere objects. Furthermore, dragon types are notoriously difficult to maintain trust with. If they see me as merely using them to further my own goals, I will be putting myself in danger for not giving them the respect they deserve. Please, Mr. Montgomery, I hope you will be able to help me with this. Bill had a thoughtful look. You know, you raise a good point that trainers don't often think about. As a species, humans are selfish creatures. We only want to satisfy our own needs, many times not giving a single hoot about others. However, you are an exception, Ash, a rose among weeds, I should say. If that isn't reason enough to help you, I will abandon my research and go live in the Galarian countryside herding Wooloo. Ash tilted his head. How do you intend to help? Bill gave a knowing smirk. Tell me, Ash. Do you recognize the significance of my family name? Ash shook his head after a moment. I'll give you a clue, Bill winked. Sylph Company. Ash's eyes widened. I think you got it, Bill nodded, second son of Robert Montgomery, president and CEO of Sylph Corporation, at your service. He continued, beyond being the leading manufacturer of tools and electronics, Sylph Company is legally allowed by law to raise or lower a trainer's roster based on recommendations by the league itself or from certified professionals, myself falling into the latter camp. As you might be aware, ACE trainers have the highest roster of all trainer categories, at 15 Pokémon. Incidentally, that number is the highest allowed by league laws. With just a few clicks of a button, I will be able to increase your roster to the maximum number. Ash shakily signed, "Are you for real?" "Positive," Bill nodded. "This is my thanks for your invaluable assistance in furthering my research. Do you have a Pokédex?" Rotom shot out of Ash's pocket. "Good evening, Researcher Montgomery. I am Rotom, and I serve as user Ash's sign language interpreter and Pokédex." "Ah yes, Rotom phone," Bill grinned. "How far we have come in combining Pokémon and technology to make our everyday lives easier. Follow me to this computer." Bill headed over to a futuristic-looking monitor, with Ash and his team following close behind. The researcher took Rotom, hooked it up to the monitor, booted the system up, and began typing away for a few moments. Rotom began vibrating. "BZZT. BZZT. System updating, complete." There was a soft ding. "Trainer Ash Ketchum's roster has been increased from 6 to 15. Bill unhooked Rotom from the monitor. "There you go, Ash. All done." Ash's jaw had fallen open. He shakily signed, "Mr. Montgomery, thank you. This means so much to me." "You're most welcome, Ash." Bill beamed. "Anything for." Loud beeping cut the researcher off. Immediately turning his attention back to the screen, Bill stared intensely as he typed, fiddled and adjusted several buttons and knobs around the machine. Luca mirrored his master's confusion, and asked for them all. "Mr. Montgomery, what is happening?" "Unbelievable," Bill muttered. "Is it really happening?" "What is happening?" Bill turned to his guests, eyes alight with even more excitement than they had ever seen until now. "My friends, we are on the cusp of a breakthrough. We are about to see the fruits of my research." Ash signed. "Is it a shiny Pokémon?" "No, even greater than that." Bill proclaimed. "Are you familiar with the legend of the 7 monarchs?" Ash shook his head. "I'll run you all through quickly." Bill cleared his throat. Many millennia ago, the landmass that is now Kanto and Johto was jointly ruled by 7 draconic monarchs. They were what we call a Charizard, Dragonite, Kingdra, Altaria, Salamence, Garchomp, and Druddigon. They are not the same as legendary Pokémon, but by today's standards, they each carried the power and strength of mythical Pokémon, essentially demigods. Bill began pacing around the room. As the legend tells, the world was invaded by a truly monstrous entity. This dark, eldritch abomination wanted to consume the world to satisfy its never-ending hunger. It rivaled the unmatched power of the creator, Arceus, and not even the combined might of the world's legendary Pokémon was enough to drive off the monster. It was only when the 7 monarchs volunteered their services did the world stand a chance of survival. Ash nodded, absolutely hooked by the story. An almighty battle was fought. A good proportion of the world's landmasses were decimated. Eventually, the abomination was vanquished and driven away, but not without the monarchs suffering losses of their own. Ash signed. "What happened to them?" "1 was lost to the distortion world, presumed dead," Bill explained. 3 were weakened beyond recovery, and their bodies were returned to the world. 1 was consumed by the magma of Mt. Moon. Ash's eyes widened. "Yes, Mt. Moon was once an active volcano, but it went extinct after the fabled asteroid fell and vaporized its entire magma chamber upon impact, but I digress. The 2nd turned into sea foam and joined the vast reaches of the ocean. And the 3rd, incidentally the Charizard, let his dying flames cremate him. His ashes were scattered over an expanse of land that we now know as Cherisific Valley. If you ever have the time, Ash, and your Charmander is willing, you should take him there to train and build up his strength." Ash nodded, eager to hear the rest of the story. The 5th bravely sacrificed her life to save the 7th, and the 6th died peacefully as he drove the abomination out into the infinite reaches of outer space. Out of the 7, only 1 survived. He goes by the title of Rex Dragonite. Bill had a long, faraway glimmer in his eyes. "For years, I have studied and researched the legend, searching far and wide for any signs of Rex Dragonite. When I rebuilt this lighthouse, I hope that he will answer my call and reveal himself to me. It will be the pinnacle of scientific discovery if he will let me document his otherworldly form." Ash, however, was unsure. "But what if Rex Dragonite does not want to be disturbed? What if he does not take lightly to your attempts at locating him?" "We will never know for sure." Bill's eyes now had a slightly manic look to them, "until he appears." In the distance, an immense roar shook the air. The lighthouse trembled slightly. He's coming. Bill was beside himself with excitement, rushing towards a set of doors that led to a balcony. Rex Dragonite. He is on his way. Come quick, Ash. You must witness this spectacle. As a storm was raging outside, Ash returned Charmander into his Pokeball before joining Bill on the balcony. Luca and the rest of the team followed suit. The rain fell hard, and the wind howled like a beast. Down below, the waves crashed against the cliff, churning and spitting with the wind. At first, Ash couldn't see anything. But a second, even louder roar shook the lighthouse, and the storm appeared to worsen. He tugged Bill's sleeve and signed, "Are you sure this is a good idea? What if Rex Dragonite attacks the lighthouse? I have faith that he won't." Then came a third roar, and the air shifted. From the veil of rain and wind, a towering form appeared through the darkness. The spinning lights periodically casted illumination over the form, easily taller than the lighthouse and much wider. Rex Dragonite's wings easily spanned 50 meters, but unlike the typical draconic wings, the appendages resembled more of an angel's wings. He had markings on his head that resembled a crown, and his arms and body were corded with thick muscle, giving him a more shapely appearance than a typical specimen. Bill's eyes shone with unhealthy glee. "Rex Dragonite, Calrinos." The almighty Dragonite spun on Bill. The howling wind rose several notches, to the point that Ash was literally straining himself to not get blown away. The monarch's eyes flashed a deadly red, and his form appeared to grow even bigger than it was before. "Arrogant human! You dare disrespect me by uttering my name?" The voice was dark, deafening and undeniably outraged. Whatever glee and excitement that Bill previously had evaporated in an instant. He had committed a grave sin, an unforgivable faux pas. When in the presence of a monarch, one must never address them by their name like some common peasant. "Your Majesty! I didn't mean to." Bill spluttered hastily, "I mean no insult. I only wish to." He never got to say anything else. Atop Rex Dragonite's head, the two antennae came together and produced a glowing orb of light. Bill suddenly went rigid like a statue. His mouth fell open, and the same glowing light shone from within. His eyes disappeared behind the same light, and he was suddenly lifted from the balcony by about a meter. Ash and his team shrunk back. The only possible means of survival was to escape. But in the presence of the mighty monarch, all were frozen, unable to move. Rex Dragonite eyed Ash, before turning to Adela, and back to Ash. "You, child, are not like this foolish miscreant. My blood has sworn her loyalty to you, which spares you and your kin from my wrath. However, become like this wretch." He glanced at Bill, "and I won't be as merciful next time." Bill was thrown back through the doors. Then, Rex Dragonite swung his wings towards Ash and his team, blowing them off the balcony and sending them hurtling towards solid ground. They all landed hard, but thankfully suffered no injuries. A single thud came from nearby, which Ash quickly discovered was his duffel bag. Rex Dragonite roared for the fourth time, producing a catastrophic hyper beam and firing it at the base of the lighthouse. An explosion rocked the cliff, and Ash watched in horror as the lighthouse tipped over the edge and fell in a cloud of rubble down towards the ocean below. There was a tremendous rumble, and Rex Dragonite disappeared off into the storm. Ash got up and hurried over to the edge. He looked down, only to see nothing but churning water and crashing waves. All traces of the lighthouse, and Bill, was gone, swept away by the currents and wind. He didn't know how long he stared at the water, stuck in stupor at what he had witnessed. He barely registered Luca coming to his side. "Master." Ash didn't reply back. To be continued.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.